Chapter 1028. This win rate is simply enough to determine the outcome. Xiongkai's odds are 1 o'clock. 1, and Bailey Hongzhuang's odds are 110. This is not good for Bailey Hongzhuang at all. This is normal. Everyone knows Xiongkai's strength. The difference between their cultivations is 2 levels. This result has already been shown. Let's bet more. Although the odds are very low, it's still a steady profit. Everyone looked a little excited. They had always loved this kind of battle, where the outcome of the battle was almost certain. Every time there was a battle like this, the Blood Arena was destined to lose money. However, the Blood Arena collected a lot of admission fees every day. Losing a little money was not a big deal to them. For a while, everyone bet on Xiongkai's victory, and the amount of money was increasing. Compared to the liveliness on Xiongkai's side, on the other hand, on Bailey Hongzhuang's side, there were no other cultivators who bet on her winning. After all, no one wanted to lose money for no reason. When everyone saw the result, they could not help but sigh. This was probably the first time in the history of the Blood Arena that there was such a huge disparity in bets. Bailey Hongzhuang could be considered to have set a precedent. In the past, even if a cultivator had no chance of winning, his friends would at least bet to encourage him. However, Bailey Hongzhuang was alone, which was why she ended up like this. This group of blind guys have no foresight at all. Xiaohei's face was full of anger. What kind of person was her master? These guys all thought that she would lose. How stupid. That's right. It will be time for these guys to regret it. Xiaobai was also unhappy. What was so great about a level 6 Red Realm? If they really fought, who knew who would win and who would lose? In the eyes of Xiaohei and Xiaobai, although Xiongkai's strength was good, no one could compare to their master. What's more, their master had fought with people of a higher level. Even if the difference of 2 levels was a little big, master still had a lot of trump cards. After knowing the result of everyone's bet, Xiongkai sneered and looked at Bailey Hongzhuang mockingly. Now, you should understand how overconfident you were, right? Xiongkai's eyes were sinister and ruthless. His good brother had actually died in the hands of this stupid woman. He really felt that it was not worth it. The competition hasn't started yet. How do you know the final result? Bailey Hongzhuang looked indifferent. She was not moved by Xiongkai's words at all. Hee, Xiongkai sneered. No matter how calm Bailey Hongzhuang was now, in his eyes, it was just a pretense by Bailey Hongzhuang. I understand your plan. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows slightly. She was too lazy to bother with this guy talking to himself. Once you walk out of the Blood Chi Tower, I will let you die in humiliation. That's why you chose to fight with me in this arena. This way, you could die more easily. Xiongkai looked at Bailey Hongzhuang's face, the ridicule on his lips growing. However, your wishful thinking is wrong. On this stage, I will also let you die in incomparable humiliation. I think everyone here wants to see what kind of posture you have under your clothes. Chapter 1029. Following Xiongkai's words, the coldness in Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes deepened. The ice was so cold that it almost solidified like a sharp blade, incomparably sharp. Her ink-black phoenix eyes emitted a terrifyingly sharp and intimidating light. Bailey Hongzhuang's voice became increasingly gloomy. I will let you die a horrible death. If it was said that Bailey Hongzhuang was indifferent towards Xiongkai previously, at this moment, she only wanted to personally take Xiongkai's head and let him die an incomparably painful death. However, when Xiongkai heard Bailey Hongzhuang's threat, it was as if he had heard a joke. Ha ha ha, big words. I really admire your courage. Xiongkai laughed out loud. That playful and joking look clearly showed that he did not place Bailey Hongzhuang in his eyes at all. This kind of light threat was simply a joke. No matter how stubborn Bailey Hongzhuang was, it was of no use. Bailey Hongzhuang's icy cold eyes were like a cold lake in October, containing the power to swallow everything. Do you know that you're very ugly? Once these words were spoken, the smile on Xiongkai's face instantly froze. Especially when you smile, you're even uglier. If I were you, with this appearance, I would find a mask and wear it, so as not to spoil people's appetites. Bailey Hongzhuang's words were increasingly merciless. Usually, Xiantian cultivators would look better than ordinary people due to the long period of energy nourishment. Out of all the cultivators she had seen, this Xiong Kai was undoubtedly the ugliest. Now, this ugly and disgusting fellow was actually laughing so unscrupulously in front of her. It really made her feel extremely disgusted. Xiong Kai's body trembled as he slowly clenched his fists. He stared furiously at Bailey Hongzhuang. The biggest pain in his life was his appearance. Bailey Hongzhuang's words were like a knife piercing his heart. It was because of his appearance that he only had one friend, Song Mingjia. The others did not really treat him as a friend at all. He could still remember everyone's mocking gazes, and it was only when his strength was strong enough to shut everyone up that he felt a little better. However, now Bailey Hongzhuang had exposed his scars. He must make Bailey Hongzhuang die without a burial place. The competition begins. After the referee recorded everything, he also announced the start of the competition. As soon as the referee's voice faded, Bailey Hongzhuang and Xiong Kai started the battle. Bailey Hongzhuang stepped forward, and with a thought, the majestic power in her body suddenly roared out, and the aura of the fourth level of the Red Realm immediately broke out. Xiong Kai's movements were also extremely fast, and the aura of the sixth stage of the Red Realm spread out in an instant, directly blocking the aura of Bailey Hongzhuang. The corners of Xiong Kai's mouth curled into a sneer. "Just wait for your miserable death." Bailey Hongzhuang snorted coldly, her hands gradually covered with a layer of jade color. The cultivation of the sixth level of the Red Realm was indeed stronger than her, both in terms of strength and primary force. However, compared with these unorthodox cultivators, her trump card was incomparable. In the next moment, Xiong Kai's body moved and suddenly appeared in front of Bailey Hongzhuang. At the same time, his tyrannical fist mercilessly attacked Bailey Hongzhuang's face. The huge fist rapidly enlarged in Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes, but her beautiful face was still indifferent and calm. In fact, she was so calm that it was a little scary. Bang! Chapter 10:30. When everyone saw that Bailey Hongzhuang, who was at level 4 of the Red Realm, was actually going head-to-head with Xiong Kai, who was at level 6 of the Red Realm, there was a hint of surprise in their eyes. Wasn't this a suicidal move? Not to mention the huge gap in strength between the two levels of strength. What's more, Bailey Hongzhuang was just a girl. Competing in strength was suicidal. However, the next scene shocked everyone. This was because Bailey Hongzhuang did not show the slightest disadvantage after the head-on collision with Xiong Kai. On the contrary, this was just the beginning of the battle between the two. Bang, bang, bang. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes flashed with a cold light, and her fists wrapped in Yuanli continued to attack Xiong Kai. She had only stayed in the Bloodground Abyss for a short 2 days, but the violent factor in her heart continued to spread, and she just wanted to have a good fight. As for this Xiong Kai, he was undoubtedly an excellent target. Every time the two of them collided, there would be a burst of sonic booms, and the air would explode directly, but the two of them were getting faster and faster. Bailey Hongzhuang's punches were as fast as thunder, as fast as lightning, and like a storm, she crazily hit Xiong Kai, and all the violent factors in her heart were also expressed freely under such a tyrannical bombardment. With the help of the snow dragon grass, her physical strength had also improved a lot during this period of time. At this moment in the battle, she immediately found that her body was tougher than before, and this strength was also more powerful. Xiong Kai discovered that Bailey Hongzhuang was extraordinary at the first moment when he fought with Bailey Hongzhuang, because the power that Bailey Hongzhuang broke out was much stronger than that of an ordinary level 4 of the Red Realm cultivator. The more they fought, the more shocked he was. Bailey Hongzhuang's combat power, strength, and physical strength were shocking. Moreover, he felt that Bailey Hongzhuang had not used a killing move on him, but was just using him as a target to vent. Although he had no evidence for this, based on his combat experience, he believed that his judgment was not wrong. Thinking of this, Xiong Kai did not dare to underestimate Bailey Hongzhuang anymore. Otherwise, if he failed miserably, it would be really painful. Everyone looked at the battle between Bailey Hongzhuang and Xiong Kai, and the original look of watching a play had changed a little, and their eyes were full of shock. Logically speaking, this was a one-sided situation. Why was the situation different from what they had imagined? The two's figures were as fast as lightning. The speed of their punches was as fast as lightning, and their punches were even more amazing. They could only hear the sound of the continuous explosions, and from the storm like a storm of attacks as attacks. SSS. Bang. Bangs SSSS. Hongzhuang's SS. Bailey Hongzhuang gasped for breath and retreated 2 steps, her eyes still as sharp as a knife. After this fight, she was very satisfied with the improvement in her strength these days. Now it was time to get serious. Xiongkai was knocked to the ground by Bailey Hongzhuang, and his face was really ugly. His cultivation was 2 levels higher than Bailey Hongzhuang, but now he was knocked to the ground by Bailey Hongzhuang. This was really embarrassing. Xiongkai immediately stood up with a carp flip. His ugly face was gloomy and vicious. He had to put away his underestimation of his opponent. No matter what, he must avenge Song Mingjie. Compared to Xiongkai's seriousness, Bailey Hongzhuang looked very indifferent. Chapter 1031. In terms of cultivation resources and fighting methods, cultivators who came from powerful families were much stronger than those who came from the wild. That was because they had the experience left to them by their predecessors, which allowed them to take fewer detours. As a result, their cultivation speed was naturally much faster than those who came from the wild. Bailey Hongzhuang had only fought for a short while, but she had already understood Xiongkai's true strength. Cultivation was indeed very important, but the fighting strength of different cultivators was not always the same. If the person standing in front of Bailey Hongzhuang at this moment was a cultivator of the 6th level of the Red Realm from an aristocratic family, it would be much more difficult for her to deal with him. As I said, I will make you die miserably. Bailey Hongzhuang's voice was cold, and her eyes were full of contempt and coldness, as usual when she looked at Xiongkai. Based on what Xiongkai had said before, she would not be merciful to him. Listening to Bailey Hongzhuang's confident words, Xiongkai's face was a little ugly, and he had a faint premonition in his heart. The strength that Bailey Hongzhuang showed was not something that an ordinary cultivator of the 4th level of the Red Realm could have. At this moment, the people in the stands also realized that the situation was not good. They did not expect that Bailey Hongzhuang did not care about the 2-level gap at all. There had been some powerful cultivators in the Bloodground Abyss, but this kind of cultivator was relatively rare. They did not expect that Bailey Hongzhuang was one of them. If that was the case, wouldn't all the bets they had made previously be for naught? At this thought, everyone's faces became frightened. They thought that this was a profitable business, but who would have thought that Bailey Hongzhuang's fighting strength was completely unexpected? Xiongkai, defeat her. Come on, you're a cultivator of the 6th level of the Red Realm, but you can't beat a woman of the 4th level of the Red Realm. You could go to hell. It's okay if you are ugly, but if you are weak, you should go and accompany Song Mingjie. Everyone's cheers and angry voices rang out. They didn't want their money to go down the drain like this. Xiongkai's expression turned extremely gloomy when he heard the crowd's words. He knew very well what kind of people these people were. However, he was unable to accept their words at this moment. Xiongkai clenched his fists so tightly that his knuckles turned white and his veins bulged as he glared at Bailey Hongzhuang. Your strength is indeed not bad, but it won't be so easy for you to defeat me. Bailey Hongzhuang glanced at Xiongkai indifferently. Cut the crap. In the next moment, a sparkling and translucent sword appeared in Bailey Hongzhuang's hand. Origin energy surged endlessly into the sharp sword. After Bailey Hongzhuang understood Xiongkai's true strength, she didn't want to waste any more time. She wanted to end the battle quickly and solve this problem as soon as possible. Xiongkai was keenly aware of Bailey Hongzhuang's murderous intent. Obviously, Bailey Hongzhuang was serious this time. Thinking of this, Xiongkai's mind was also a little nervous. At the same time, a killing blade appeared in Xiongkai's hand. Ah! Xiongkai roared, raised his weapon, and immediately rushed toward Bailey Hongzhuang. Chapter 1032. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's ghostly figure, A look of astonishment surfaced in everyone's eyes. Did they not see clearly or something? Just as everyone was pondering, Xiong Kai had already crashed to the ground. Fresh blood splattered on the stage. Xiong Kai only felt a little regretful that his attack did not succeed in landing on Bailey Hongzhuang's body. Just as he was about to turn around and continue his attack, he found that his body had uncontrollably fallen to the ground. Xiong Kai was puzzled, but suddenly found that the blood on his feet was continuously spurting out like a fountain. Instantly, Xiong Kai's face turned ghastly pale. He stared blankly at his legs that had already separated from his body. He simply could not believe that this scene was real. This was only a short exchange of blows. He did not feel Bailey Hongzhuang's attack at all. But now, he had actually become like this? Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Xiong Kai indifferently. Her color glass sword had always been extremely sharp. Under the attention of her origin power, it could even cut through hair with a blow. Moreover, the shadowless kill was a martial skill that could take a person's life without anyone noticing. Its effect had always been very shocking. If she wanted to kill Xiong Kai would have already died in that exchange of blows. However, she had said that she would make Xiong Kai die a painful death. Long ago, when Xiong Kai had said that he wanted to humiliate her in the arena, she had already made up her mind. Similarly, she would not let Xiong Kai die so easily. What do you think of this way of dying? The corners of Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a mocking smile, but her beautiful eyes flickered with ruthlessness and cruelty. She had never shown mercy to her enemies. In a place like the Bloody Ground Abyss, in the face of everyone's provocation, the best way was to display one's strength. Even though she had already taught Song Mingji a lesson yesterday, everyone had not seen it with their own eyes, so the deterrence was not enough. But now, she had defeated Xiong Kai in front of everyone. This was enough. Xiong Kai's expression was extremely ugly. Fresh blood kept spurting out, causing his face to become even paler. Bailey Hongzhuang. Xiong Kai gritted his teeth and endured the intense pain from his wounds. He understood that it was impossible for him to leave the blood aura field alive today. Even if he managed to leave this place alive, it would be useless. Without his legs, he would be nothing more than a cripple. The only thing he hated was that he couldn't avenge Song Mingjie. Bailey Hongzhuang pointed her sword at Xiong Kai. You can only blame yourself for provoking me. You win. Xiong Kai's voice was mixed with forbearance and anger. He had never thought that he would be defeated by a woman who was weaker than him. The next moment, Xiong Kai raised his frenzied saber and swung it at his own neck. Instead of being humiliated by Bailey Hongzhuang and then dying, it was better to give himself a quick death first. Bailey Hongzhuang also noticed Xiong Kai's intention, but she didn't care. Since Xiong Kai wanted to commit suicide, she didn't have to do anything. Following Xiong Kai's fall, the curtains of this competition came to an end. Bailey Hongzhuang wins. The referee's voice rang out, but the crowd's expressions were extremely ugly. Who would have thought that such a dark horse would appear? Everyone had lost their bets. Only Bailey Hongzhuang had won. 100,000 gold coins. The odds were 1 to 10. That was 1 million gold coins. Chapter 1033. Bailey Hongzhuang calmly walked to the counter and received her 1 million gold coins. The referee was also surprised by Bailey Hongzhuang's performance. He had thought that they would definitely lose this round, but he did not expect Bailey Hongzhuang to be such a dark horse. However, this 1 million gold coins was also a lot. Comparing the two, they did not make a loss. Feeling the envious eyes of the crowd, Bailey Hongzhuang glanced at the crowd. These people really wanted her to die in the arena. Under Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze, the crowd lowered their heads. Now they did not dare to underestimate Bailey Hongzhuang's strength. If Xiong Kai, who was at level 6 of the Red Realm, could die in the hands of Bailey Hongzhuang, many of them would not be a match for Bailey Hongzhuang. It seemed that Bailey Hongzhuang was really an excellent cultivator from a big force. Her foundation and strength were not to be underestimated. However, just as the crowd was sighing, Bailey Hongzhuang walked into the arena again. Who dares to come up? As Bailey Hongzhuang's voice fell, the cultivators present could not help but be stunned. They all looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in astonishment. Bailey Hongzhuang has just fought. Does she want to continue the challenge? She has already used up a lot of her primary energy in the battle with Xiong Kai. If she continues to fight now, she really does not take us seriously. Who will go up? Kill her. The crowd kept looking around. They all wanted to know who would go up and fight with Bailey Hongzhuang. In this blood aura field, all kinds of things had happened before. Even battles had happened before, but this kind of situation was very rare. After all, it was very disadvantageous to continue the challenge tournament under the condition of exhaustion, unless one had enough confidence in themselves. Obviously, in their eyes, Bailey Hongzhuang was like this. To Bailey Hongzhuang, the battle just now did not consume much of her energy. She only wanted to obtain 10 consecutive victories as soon as possible so that she could enter the trial. The first level wasn't difficult for her at all, so she might as well finish it as soon as possible and head straight to the second level. However, Bailey Hongzhuang stood on the arena for a while, but no cultivator went up. Obviously, all the cultivators were hesitating. If one didn't have enough strength to stand up there, that would be the same as seeking death. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang was about to leave, a man slowly walked onto the stage. "I'll spar with you." Bailey Hongzhuang sized up the man in front of her. The man was about 25 years old. He looked ordinary and honest. The word simple and honest was clearly inappropriate in the Bloodground Abyss, but in Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes, this person was simple and honest. Su Qianlu, 5th level of the Red Realm, 5 consecutive victories. Bailey Hongzhuang, 4th level of the Red Realm, 1 victory. After seeing Su Qianlu come out to fight, a touch of excitement appeared in everyone's eyes. No matter what, at least Bailey Hongzhuang had an opponent. Bailey Hongzhuang still bet on herself to win, but this time only bet 50,000 gold coins. Previously, when she was fighting with Xiong Kai, she just wanted to create a momentum. Su Qianlu had no enmity with her, so she didn't need to put pressure on him. However, the crowd suddenly found that Bailey Hongzhuang and Su Qianlu's odds were the same. This meant that according to the data of the blood aura field, Bailey Hongzhuang and Su Qianlu should be equal in strength. Chapter 1034. After seeing the same odds, the practitioners who had originally decided to bet on Bailey Hongzhuang's victory hesitated for a moment. The odds of the Bloodchi Tower had always been particular. Many times, the strength of the two could be seen from the odds alone. However, the people of the Bloodchi Tower had clearly seen Bailey Hongzhuang's strength just now, and now they even set the same odds. This meant that they felt that the strength of Bailey Hongzhuang and Su Qianlu was equal. They did not have any impression of Su Qianlu and could not help but hesitate. Not long after, the crowd began to place their bets. There were people who bet on both of them winning. In this kind of situation where the odds were the same, it was completely a matter of luck. When Bailey Hongzhuang learned about the odds, she also looked at Su Qianlu in a higher light. It seemed that Su Qianlu's strength was not weak either. The competition begins. With the referee's order, Bailey Hongzhuang and Su Qianlu both took a step back and opened up the battle array. Su Qianlu clenched his fists and saluted to Bailey Hongzhuang, then took out his weapon. Seeing Su Qianlu's posture, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes also showed a touch of surprise. She was just a little surprised by Su Qianlu's strength before, but now it seemed that Su Qianlu was not a practitioner from the grassroots. Perhaps this salute could be faked, but Su Qianlu's serious look and the temperament that he showed could not be faked. However, a 25-year-old who was still at the 5th level of the Red Realm was not considered strong in the forces. Bailey Hongzhuang also returned the salute and took out the color glass sword. Her dark phoenix eyes flashed with seriousness. Since Su Qianlu was also from a big family, then Su Qianlu's strength was not comparable to that of a practitioner like Xiong Kai. Bailey Hongzhuang held the colored glass sword tightly, and a yuan qi in her body immediately surged into the colored glass sword. The glaze sword body was sparkling and translucent. It was beautiful and elegant, but the sharp light it emitted made everyone understand how sharp this sword was. Looking at the glass sword, everyone couldn't help but recall the scene of Xiong Kai's leg being cut off. Xiongkai's reaction was simply amazing. Previously, they were too amazed by Bailey Hongzhuang's strength that they had overlooked this sword. Now that they thought about it, they didn't doubt that this sword was definitely a treasure. Ordinary swords would not be able to do this, so this sword would have to be at the level of a spiritual treasure. At the thought of this, everyone was envious. This Bailey Hongzhuang was simply a moving treasure trove in their eyes. Whether it was the sword or the money on Bailey Hongzhuang, it was a considerable amount of wealth. Not to mention anything else, just the 1 million gold coins that Bailey Hongzhuang had just received was already a lot. What's more, with the wealth that Bailey Hongzhuang had shown, the things in her Chinquan bag were definitely more than this. Once they killed Bailey Hongzhuang, then they would really be rich. For a time, many people began to make small calculations in their hearts. It must be said that in the Bloodland Abyss, there are the most vicious and evil people. They burned, killed, and robbed everything. This kind of killing and robbing was very normal. Although they were a little afraid of Bailey Hongzhuang's strength, they could not resist the temptation of this treasure. Chapter 1035. However, while everyone was secretly calculating in their hearts, Bailey Hongzhuang's attention was all on Su Tianlu. The battle between the two was on the verge of breaking out. Almost at the same time, the two suddenly closed the distance between them, and their long swords met. Ding, ding, ding. The sound of metal clashing instantly exploded. The two figures flew, and countless sword chi mixed with the collision of sparks burst out around them. The colored glass sword in Bailey Hongzhuang's hand was like a snake, and every move was sharp and aimed at the vital parts of Su Tianlu's body. Su Tianlu's reaction was also extremely sharp. Even though Bailey Hongzhuang's movements were extremely fast, he still nimbly dodged these attacks. Looking at the situation of Su Tianlu's attack, Bailey Hongzhuang understood that Su Tianlu was not a grassroots cultivator, because his speed and reaction were obviously trained. However, even so, Su Tianlu was no match for her. Everyone only saw the two figures crisscrossing. Their movements were as fast as lightning, and the sword chi mixed with sparks seemed to be extremely intense. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang and Su Tianlu were evenly matched, everyone's eyes were filled with excitement. Only such an evenly matched battle could arouse their greatest interest, so this was a real game. Su Tianlu, kill her. Defeat Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang, come on, defeat Su Tianlu. Bailey Hongzhuang, you must win. Everyone shouted as they drank. They had already lost the previous round, and they only hoped that they could recover a little in this round. If they lost this battle, it would be one disaster after another. I've never heard of Su Tianlu before, but now it seems that Su Tianlu's strength is not weak. This Su Tianlu came to the Blood Abyss earlier than you, but he hasn't been to the Blood Chi Tower for a while. I believe that Su Tianlu will be able to defeat Bailey Hongzhuang. I don't think so. Bailey Hongzhuang defeated Xiongkai, who was at the 6th level of the Red Realm. Even if Su Tianlu is not weak, he is not Bailey Hongzhuang's opponent. Everyone held on to their own opinions and waited for the final result. Bang! Following a side kick from Bailey Hongzhuang, Su Tianlu was sent flying by Bailey Hongzhuang's kick. He then crashed onto the edge of the ring. Su Tianlu wanted to stand up and fight back, but Bailey Hongzhuang's attack had already landed on Su Tianlu's neck. Looking at this scene, Su Tianlu's face turned pale. He did not expect Bailey Hongzhuang to be so strong. He had not come to the Blood Chi Tower for a while, but the strength of the cultivators in the Blood Chi Tower had increased to such a level. Thinking of this, Su Tianlu directly closed his eyes. In this place, once he lost, only death would await him. At the same time, it was also because of this that every one of them was able to unleash their strongest combat strength in battle, because no one could afford to pay the price of failure. However, just as Su Tianlu was waiting for the end of his life, Bailey Hongzhuang's voice suddenly rang out. Can you announce the result of this battle? The referee was stunned and looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in surprise. After confirming that what he heard was correct, he said, Bailey Hongzhuang wins. Bailey Hongzhuang put away her colored glaze sword. She only wanted to win this battle, not Su Tianlu's life. Chapter 1036. Everyone did not understand why Bailey Hongzhuang ended the battle like this. Logically speaking, Bailey Hongzhuang should have directly taken Su Tianlu's life, but this merciful situation was clearly different from what they had imagined. Su Tianlu could not help but open his eyes when he did not feel the pain he had expected. When he saw that Bailey Hongzhuang did not intend to kill him, his eyes were filled with astonishment. However, Bailey Hongzhuang did not care about everyone's astonishment and immediately prepared to walk to the counter to receive her gold coins. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang took a step forward, Su Tianlu's voice suddenly rang out. What? Su Tianlu could not understand why Bailey Hongzhuang would choose to do this at such time. This was really too surprising. However, Bailey Hongzhuang's next words surprised Su Tianlu even more. We are not enemies. Her voice fell, and Bailey Hongzhuang walked directly down the ring, leaving only Su Tianlu sitting in the ring in a daze. We are not enemies. Yes, they did not have any enmity, so they could not be considered enemies. However, after living in the bloody ground abyss for so long, he had long regarded everyone as an enemy. Not only him, but the other cultivators were also the same. Therefore, as soon as they walked onto the stage, they would think of ways to kill each other. At this moment, when he heard Bailey Hongzhuang's words, he actually had a feeling that it was too far away, but this seemed to be right. Not only Su Tianlu, but the other cultivators in the stands were also stunned after hearing this. Ever since they came to the bloody ground abyss, they had never heard of Bailey Hongzhuang's words. Su Tianlu slowly stood up, looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's slim back. A complicated and distant light flashed in his eyes. After Bailey Hongzhuang received the gold coin she won from the bet, she stood on the stage again under everyone's astonished gazes. Who's next? As soon as this was said, everyone's eyes fell on Bailey Hongzhuang, and the astonishment in their eyes grew stronger. Is Bailey Hongzhuang all right? Is she going to fight 3 rounds in a row? It's very likely that she wants to participate in the first level of the trial, so she wants to accumulate a 10-win streak. Many cultivators immediately understood Bailey Hongzhuang's idea after seeing her actions. After all, everyone came to the Bloodchi Tower for the mysterious inheritance of the Bloodchi Tower. Unfortunately, not to mention obtaining the inheritance, it was very difficult to obtain a 10-win streak. Go! This Bailey Hongzhuang doesn't want people's lives. Why wouldn't they dare? If you win, then Bailey Hongzhuang's Qinquan bag will be yours. After seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's attitude towards Su Tianlu, everyone's thoughts changed a bit. If they were to go against Bailey Hongzhuang after leaving the Bloodchi Tower, they would probably have to face other opponents. If they were to defeat Bailey Hongzhuang in this arena, then everything would belong to them. Furthermore, Bailey Hongzhuang had already fought twice in a row, so her battle strength had definitely declined. Perhaps they could really pick up a bargain. At the thought of this, a cultivator quickly walked onto the stage. He was willing to give a try. Chapter 1037. This time, Bailey Hongzhuang fought to her heart's content in the ring. Every time she defeated an opponent, she would move on to the next one without hesitation. She did not give herself a lot of time, so she had to increase her strength efficiently in the blood-ground abyss. When she thought of Han Shieling, she believed that it would not be long before she encountered Han Shieling. Her strength could not be compared to Han Shieling the last time she met him, but she did not want the same thing to happen again the next time they met. Who's next? Me. Just as everyone had guessed, Bailey Hongzhuang did not want to take their lives. Now that they no longer had a psychological burden, they did not hesitate to challenge Bailey Hongzhuang. After all, the longer the battle went on, the more Bailey Hongzhuang would consume. She might lose to them at any time. However, the situation did not go as everyone wished because Bailey Hongzhuang seemed to be tireless. No matter how they attacked, Bailey Hongzhuang could always suppress them steadily. As the battle went on, Bailey Hongzhuang's attacks became more and more simple. She would use a killing move as soon as she attacked. As a result, the duration of the battle became shorter and shorter. There were more and more cultivators in the stands. After hearing the news, more and more cultivators rushed to the Bloodchi Tower to witness Bailey Hongzhuang's actions. No one thought that the girl who had just come to the blood-ground abyss would be so powerful. She did not attack at all, but once she attacked, she fought consecutively. However, after playing so many rounds in a row, no one was able to beat Bailey Hongzhuang. This scene made everyone extremely indignant. But no matter how angry they were, it was useless because Bailey Hongzhuang had proven everything with her strength. As Bailey Hongzhuang won more and more, many cultivators gradually accepted it. This was often the case in the world. Cultivators of similar strength often had the heart to compete, but when the opponent was too strong for them to catch up, they would choose to give up. Bailey Hongzhuang, 10 consecutive victories. Following the referee's words, the atmosphere in the spectator stands became stagnant. Initially, there were only 2 or 3 cultivators in the stands. Now, the entire stands were filled with cultivators. The first level of the blood aura field had not seen such a lively scene for a long time. However, there was only one figure left in everyone's minds, Bailey Hongzhuang. This Bailey Hongzhuang is too abnormal. It's not that I've never seen a cultivator with a 10-win streak, but it's the first time I've seen a cultivator with a streak of consecutive wins. This Bailey Hongzhuang is too awesome. This is the first time I've seen this. So many of you can't even defeat a woman. It's really embarrassing. Bailey Hongzhuang turned a deaf ear to everyone's discussion. After she took her gold coins from the counter, she immediately went to the place where the trial was held. After this round of competition, she finally had the chance to experience the trial. Naturally, she had to go and experience it first. Master, you're too powerful. 10 consecutive victories. These people are completely dumbfounded. Xiaohei's eyes flashed with excitement. Just looking at those guys had made it very unhappy. Now that it saw its master ruthlessly crush those guys, it felt refreshed and much happier. Chapter 1038. This is only the first level of the blood aura field. My goal is to obtain the final inheritance of the blood aura field. If I need to expend so much effort to pass the first level of the competition, I'll never be able to obtain the final inheritance of the blood aura field. Bailey Hongzhuang's heart was calm. She did not care about her victory at all. Her objective in coming here was different from many of the other cultivators. She only wanted to increase her power. Besides, she has more inheritances than them. If she were to fail on the first level, that would be the strangest thing. Bailey Hongzhuang was not aware of the great shock she had brought to the crowd. When they saw that Bailey Hongzhuang had entered the training room after achieving 10 consecutive victories, the crowd was completely speechless. Could this be any more exaggerated? She still wants to participate in the training after achieving 10 consecutive victories. This was the physical strength of a demonic beast. The crowd shook their heads. They cannot be compared to Bailey Hongzhuang at all because the latter was simply too abnormal. She had refreshed their understanding of her. Many cultivators had given up immediately. There would always be some weirdos in this world who could not be compared to her. Bailey Hongzhuang pushed open the training room's door and saw a bright and spacious room. However, it was completely empty inside. There was nothing at all. Bailey Hongzhuang was astonished when she saw this. She did not know what the training room was, and Deep Beichun had never told her either. However, from her point of view, this was only the first level of the blood aura tower. The difficulty level of the training room should not be too high. Bailey Hongzhuang slowly walked in. Once she entered, the room's door slammed shut. Soon after, 4 bronze figures appeared in front of her. Without giving her any time to think, the 4 bronze figures immediately charged towards Bailey Hongzhuang. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang's reaction was extremely quick. She immediately engaged the 4 bronze figures in battle. She believed that as long as she could defeat the 4 bronze figures, she would be able to pass the training room. Bang! Bang, bang, bang. Bailey Hongzhuang helplessly discovered that the speed of these bronze men's attacks was extremely fast and ferocious, not giving her any time to release her martial skills. Not only that, the 4 bronze men worked together seamlessly, and she was somewhat inferior under the attacks of these 4 bronze men. Teamwork was a terrifying strength. Every attack from these 4 bronze men was very powerful. Once it landed on the body, not to mention the pain, if it landed on a weak spot, it was very likely that it would be seriously injured. Bailey Hongzhuang narrowed her eyes. She knew that it was not a good idea to continue dealing with these 4 bronze men. Because these bronze men weren't real people, they wouldn't feel tired and wouldn't be exhausted from fighting, but she was different. The longer the battle dragged on, the more disadvantageous it would be for her. The best way was to end the battle as soon as possible. Thinking of this, Bailey Hongzhuang focused her mind. At this point, she could only attack them one by one. Bailey Hongzhuang's figure moved, and a torrential storm of attacks attacked one of the bronze men. As long as there was one less bronze man, their teamwork would be broken. This way, she would be able to win. When Xiao He and Xiao Bai saw that Bailey Hongzhuang was being attacked by the 4 bronze men, they wanted to step forward to help. However, when they walked forward, they suddenly realized that there was a strange force that prevented them from approaching. What's going on? Chapter 1039. It seems that the trials of the Blood Chi Tower have restricted our attacks. Only Master can resolve the battle herself. Xiao Bai spoke slowly as its large, sparkling eyes flickered with a wise light. They had also seen such restrictions before, so they were not surprised by this. However, the level of this restrictive spell was not low. The fact that such a restrictive spell had appeared in the Blood Chi Tower proved that the Blood Chi Tower was not simple. Master's battle powers are already very powerful. There's no need for us to interfere in this trial. Bai Shi appeared to be very calm. They had witnessed their master's battle powers. Even though the 4 bronze men had been very troublesome when they had first come into contact with them, their master had begun to turn the tables around. Bang! The sound of a sonic boom suddenly rang out. The 3 beasts then realized that one of the bronze men had been smashed into pieces by Bailey Hongzhuang's fist. With one less bronze man, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes filled with confidence. When she had first come into contact with these bronze men, she had only felt that their powers were extremely abnormal. Furthermore, they could not feel any pain. Just this point alone had put her at a disadvantage. However, she also realized that fighting with these bronze men was a good opportunity to train her hand-to-hand combat skills. If these 4 bronze men were to be brought out, they would be extremely powerful close combat experts. After understanding this, Bailey Hongzhuang was no longer in a hurry to win. The most important thing now was to improve her battle skills. As time slowly passed, the cultivators around the Blood Chi Tower began to make their own judgments. Even though Bailey Hongzhuang had entered the trial area, not a single cultivator had left. This was because they wanted to know if Bailey Hongzhuang would be able to pass the trial. If Bailey Hongzhuang had passed the trial after achieving 10 consecutive victories, it would be truly shocking. However, everyone present hoped that Bailey Hongzhuang would not be able to pass the trial. This would be a great consolation to them. From what I can see, Bailey Hongzhuang would definitely not be able to pass the trial. So much time has passed, yet she still hasn't appeared. She must have failed and is too embarrassed to show herself. That's right. How difficult is it to pass the trial in one go? Bailey Hongzhuang is really indulging in fantasy. Just you wait. There will be a joke to watch in a while. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang had not come out for a long time, everyone was even more convinced that their judgment was not wrong. After all, they had seen cultivators who had passed this trial before. If they had passed smoothly, they would not have needed such a long time. For a time, everyone once again returned to their previous lazy and unrestrained appearance. However, no one went up to the arena to fight again. Although they were doing their own things and pretending to be indifferent, but their gazes still fell on the entrance of the training area from time to time, wanting to know when Bailey Hongzhuang would come out. This was probably the first time in a long time that so many cultivators had gathered in the Blood Chi field, waiting to know the results of a cultivator's trial. However, if everyone knew that Bailey Hongzhuang was only using the bronze men as practice targets in the training area, they would probably faint. Bailey Hongzhuang had completely treated the bronze men as practice targets. From the way the bronze men fought, she had gained a certain amount of inspiration. After being inspired, she immediately used it. However, the power she used wasn't very strong, so it didn't completely destroy the bronze man. Chapter 1040. When Bailey Hongzhuang walked out of the trial area, she suddenly realized that everyone's eyes were on her. According to her theory, she had stayed in the trial area for quite a long time. Furthermore, everyone had noticed her as soon as she walked out. Could it be that these people were waiting to know the results of her trial? When this thought surfaced in her mind, Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head and ignored it. She could not think too highly of herself. She had successfully passed the first level of the trial today. Tomorrow, she would set off for the second level. Bailey Hongzhuang was in an extremely good mood at the thought of this. The corners of her lips slowly curled into a faint smile as she walked out of the Blood Chi Tower. She had achieved her goal for the day, so there was no need for her to stay here any longer. She might as well go back and have a good rest before continuing to work hard tomorrow. Relaxation with moderation was her way of cultivation. When the crowd saw that Bailey Hongzhuang had left the Blood Chi Tower without saying a word, they were rather puzzled. However, they would not show their curiosity in front of Bailey Hongzhuang, so everyone went about their own business. It was only after Bailey Hongzhuang had left that the crowd burst into an uproar. Even though they had always been cold and heartless living in the Bloodground Abyss, they were much more familiar with this kind of situation. Bailey Hongzhuang must have failed. Otherwise, she wouldn't have left with her tail between her legs. That's not necessarily true. I think she was in a good mood when she left. In the history of this trial area, no one has ever stayed in there for so long. Instantly, some cultivators had already walked towards the trial area. Every time someone passed the trial, their name would appear on the black stone pillar in the trial area. Therefore, they only needed to take a look to know the results. When the cultivators who had gone to check the results saw the shining words on the black stone pillar, Bailey Hongzhuang, they were completely speechless. "Hey, tell me what the results are." The cultivators at the spectator stand could not help but ask when they saw that the cultivators who had gone to check the results did not react. They were anxious to know the final results. Hearing the crowd's questions, the cultivators who were in a daze finally reacted. They immediately turned around and said to the crowd, "She passed." As soon as they said that, the atmosphere on the first level of the Blood Chi Tower froze for a moment. Many cultivators could not believe what they had just heard and immediately walked towards the trial area. However, that shining name clearly fell into everyone's eyes, clearly telling them that all of this was real. Heavens, this is too much. Where the hell did this pervert come from? I just don't understand how she managed to stay in the trial for so long. Everyone was speechless. Today, Bailey Hongzhuang had completely become the center of attention. Because it was too much a blow, some cultivators could not help but sigh with emotion. Fortunately, they had not offended Bailey Hongzhuang earlier. Otherwise, they would have been really unlucky. Come to think of it, Song Mingjie and Xiong Kai were really unlucky. If they had known that Bailey Hongzhuang was so powerful, they would not have chosen to make an enemy out of Bailey Hongzhuang. Chapter 1041. Bailey Hongzhuang had just walked out of the Blood Chi Tower when she realized that Di Beichun was waiting for her not far away. Joy appeared on her pretty face as she immediately walked up to Di Beichun. "Why did you come to pick me up today?" Yesterday, Di Beichun had directly waited for her at the inn. His actions today were obviously a little different. Di Beichun smiled faintly as his large hand grabbed Bailey Hongzhuang's small hand. "Your performance today was very amazing." Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Beichun in surprise. It turned out that Di Beichun knew about her situation in the Blood Chi Tower. However, she didn't find any trace of Di Beichun in the Blood Chi Tower. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's puzzled expression, Di Beichun only chuckled but didn't explain. How important was Hongzhuang in his heart? He couldn't be at ease to let Hongzhuang train by herself. He had to ensure that if Hongzhuang was in danger, he would be the first to appear in front of Hongzhuang. Only then could he be at ease. "Let's go back to the inn to rest first. You've used up a lot of energy today." Di Beichun held Bailey Hongzhuang's hand tightly and immediately walked in the direction of the inn with Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her phoenix eyes slightly and looked at Di Beichun's sculpture-like handsome side profile. Her heart was filled with a trace of emotion. When she first saw Di Beichun, she didn't realize it. However, When she heard that Di Beichun was concerned about her consumption of energy, she understood. Di Beichun specially came to pick her up at this moment. He must be worried that someone would attack her on the way here. After all, she had expended a lot of energy in the Blood Chi Tower, and many people wanted to attack her. She had made a lot of money in the Blood Chi Tower today. As long as they killed her, they would be able to get all the money. She had already thought of this point. In the past, she had roamed the Jianghu for many years, so she already had her own plans for this kind of thing. Moreover, as an alchemist, she never lacked medicinal pills. Even if her origin energy was greatly depleted, she only needed to replenish some origin energy, and it would be enough. However, she understood how much Di Beichun cared about her. Even though he knew that she had her own ways, he still chose to come and pick her up. Perhaps this was the only way Di Beichun could feel at ease. Along the way, everyone looked at the immortal couple, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun, and their hearts were filled with amazement. Although Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun had not been in the Bloodground Abyss for long, many people had an impression of them. This was because their appearances were simply too outstanding. It was hard not to have an impression of them. Originally, there were many people who had bad intentions towards them. However, Di Beichun had easily taken by Feng's life, so they did not dare to act rashly. Offending the strong was never a wise decision. The two of them successfully returned to the inn. Di Beichun had also prepared a delicious meal for Bailey Hongzhuang and the three beasts. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the food in front of her, and a glimmer of light appeared in her eyes. You went there again today? She could recognize that the food was also demonic beast meat. There was no demonic beast meat for sale near the Blood Chi Tower. There was only the place where Di Beichun had brought her last time. Di Beichun nodded slightly. You can nourish yourself in the process of cultivation. It will be of great help to your cultivation. Chapter 1042. Bailey Hongzhuang was touched as she stared at the piping hot dishes in front of her. Given Di Beichun's status, he had actually prepared all these for her. Those who knew Di Beichun would probably not believe it. Beichun, thank you. Bailey Hongzhuang lifted her almond-shaped eyes. Her eyes sparkled with gratitude, including everything Di Beichun had done for her. Silly girl. Di Beichun chuckled and reached out to pull Bailey Hongzhuang into his arms. There's never a need for thanks between us. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled blissfully as she felt Di Beichun's warm embrace. Even though the Bloodland Abyss was filled with danger and coldness, her feelings for Di Beichun were even deeper in this environment. You can't look. Xiaohei reached out to cover Baisher's eyes. Baisher was still so small, and this scene did not suit him. You can't look either. Just as Xiaohei was feeling smug, Xiaobai reached out to cover Xiaohei's eyes. This warm and shy situation was actually pretty good. Baisher was stunned when he was suddenly blindfolded. He immediately reached out to cover Xiaohei's eyes as well. Instantly, the three beasts formed a circle and none of them let go. When Bailey Hongzhuang left Di Beichun's embrace, she looked at the three beasts who had formed a circle and could not help but smile. Initially, the three beasts had looked like a ball. Now that they had formed a circle, they looked like an even bigger ball of fur. Two of them were white and one was black. It was truly hilarious. When she saw that none of the three beasts were willing to let go, Bailey Hongzhuang said, "If you don't come now, I'll finish everything first." As soon as he said that, the three beasties immediately loosened their grip. Nothing could resist the temptation of delicious food. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun looked at each other when they saw the three beasts jumping onto the table and eating. Their smiles deepened. "I plan to go to the second level tomorrow," Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly. Di Beichun nodded slightly. The rules for the first three levels are the same. The fourth level will only have trials, and there's no need for an arena competition. Bailey Hongzhuang tilted her head and looked at Di Beichun. Most of the cultivators on the first floor are here to watch the show. The cultivators on the second and third floor should be here for the inheritance, right? She felt that most of the cultivators on the first floor were gambling. Although there were some cultivators who were serious about the competition, most of them looked relaxed and lazy. They were not serious enough. Di Beichun smiled faintly. In fact, Many cultivators in the Blood Chi Tower are just enjoying the process of violent competition. They express their emotions through the arena competition. It's not that there are no cultivators who really want to obtain the inheritance, but the number is extremely small. That's because there are too few people who have obtained the inheritance in the history of the Blood Chi Tower. Hearing that, Bailey Hongzhuang understood. Because the possibility of obtaining the inheritance was too small, many cultivators chose to give up directly. The existence of the arena competition attracted many cultivators, so it became a place where everyone gathered. Then why do you believe that I can obtain the inheritance? Bailey Hongzhuang raised her phoenix eyes. Logically speaking, the possibility of obtaining the inheritance was so small that Di Beichun would not believe it. Suddenly, a bright light appeared in Bailey Hongzhuang's phoenix eyes. Her gaze fell on Di Beichun. Chapter 1043. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's question, Di Beichun smiled faintly and nodded. That's right. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes shone brighter, revealing a trace of surprise. She had heard that the chances of obtaining the inheritance were very small. She had never thought that Di Beichun would be one of the recipients. When did you obtain it? Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. It was no wonder that Di Beichun could possess such strength at such a young age. His master had also helped him a lot, but the most important thing was Di Beichun's hard work. A few years ago, Di Beichun's expression was gentle and elegant. Although obtaining the inheritance is very difficult, as long as it's possible, you can try. After obtaining the blood aura field, I found that it was very useful in battle. It can even resist pressure. It can be called a powerful weapon. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded gently. Just by hearing the name of the blood aura field, she understood how amazing it was. Originally, she thought that obtaining the inheritance was very far away. She had never thought that there would be a successful example by her side. Then, she had to work harder. Others were in the blood aura tower to enjoy the process of the challenge tournament, but she was not interested in the challenge tournament. She was only interested in the inheritance. What are the trials on the next few levels? Bailey Hongzhuang asked curiously. She believed that the challenge tournament was definitely not the reason that stopped everyone's progress. It was the trials that were difficult for everyone. The trials of the first 3 levels are all to deal with the bronze men. With each level up, the number of bronze men will double. As for the trials that appear on the last 6 levels, it varies from person to person. Everyone's trials are different. In comparison, the first level is relatively easy, but the last level is the most difficult. Many cultivators fail at the last level. As long as you can pass the last level, you can obtain the inheritance. The trials vary from person to person. Bailey Hongzhuang's ink-black phoenix eyes were filled with astonishment. She felt that this blood-refining tower was really interesting. The trial actually had different effects depending on the person. This was really not simple. This meant that the blood-refining tower would know everything about them and set up their weaknesses. In this way, the difficulty of success would be greatly increased. If it was someone else who heard of this trial, they might feel that it was too difficult. However, Bailey Hongzhuang was very calm. Every inheritance was difficult to obtain. If one wanted to obtain it, they naturally had to put in a certain amount of effort and pay a certain price. No matter what, this was an excellent trial. She believed that through this, her strength would increase by quite a bit. At this moment, someone knocked on the door. Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but look at Di Beichun. Only the 2 of them had come to the Bloodground Abyss, so who would be looking for them? Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's puzzled expression, Di Beichun's lips curled into a reassuring smile. Hey Mu. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang understood. Hey Mu had always been by Di Beichun's side. Last time, Di Beichun had asked He Mu to return to Tiangang's sect to express his attitude to Han Shieling. After that, He Mu had never returned. Today, He Mu had finally returned. However, no one knew what kind of news he would bring back. The door opened, and He Mu walked in without any surprise. Young master. Di Beichun nodded slightly. Come in. Chapter 1044. Hearing how He Mu addressed her, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. He Mu had never addressed her this way before. She subconsciously wanted to deny it, but thinking carefully, Di Beichun was He Mu's young master, then wouldn't she be the young master's wife? Just as Bailey Hongzhuang was in a dilemma, Di Beichen patted He Mu's shoulder and gave him a look of approval. Usually, He Mu had always been inarticulate, but now he was smart. He was very satisfied with this form of address. He Mu noticed Di Beichen's gaze, and a bashful smile appeared on his face. After he returned this time, he thought for a long time. In the past, he had always been by young master's side, but since a while ago, young master rarely allowed him to follow by his side. Later on, after he thought about it and his friend's advice, he felt that it must be because he was too insensible, which was why young master disliked him. So, after he returned this time, he had already made up his mind. As expected, after he said that, young master finally showed an expression of approval. At this moment, He Mu finally saw hope. Young master, the matter you asked me to do this time. He Mu looked up at Di Beichen. He came here today to report the results, but he didn't know that Miss Bailey was here, so he didn't know if he should continue. Looking at He Mu's expression, Di Beichen was very indifferent. He waved his hand, speak. He and Hongzhuang were already connected, and there was no need for secrets between them, so there was no need to guard against these things. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at He Mu with interest, not knowing what news He Mu brought back this time. I told Miss Han your intentions, but Miss Han said she didn't do anything. He Mu frowned. Although he went to express his young master's attitude, Miss Han's innocent and pitiful look made him really not know what to do. Young master, since Miss Han said so, I can't ask anymore. He Mu was a little helpless. This kind of thing should have been done by the young master himself, but the young master wholeheartedly wanted to stay by Miss Bailey's side. That was why the young master wanted him to express his attitude. He could understand. In the past, he also thought that the young lord had feelings for Miss Han because among all the women, the young lord treated Miss Han the best. Only after Miss Bailey appeared did he realize that the young master was completely different from how he used to be. It was because of this that he understood how important Miss Bailey was to the young master. Hearing this, Di Beichen nodded slightly. I understand. Actually, the answer was no longer important to him. From the last time they encountered the situation in Qishui City, he already understood Han Shiling's attitude. He had known Han Shiling for so long, but he never knew that Han Shiling had so many thoughts behind his arrogant appearance. Although he didn't want to come to this step, if Han Shiling harmed Hongzhuang again or destroyed his relationship with Hongzhuang, he wouldn't sit idly by. He should protect his own woman. He was very clear in his heart that the person he loved the most in this life was Bailey Hongzhuang. Seeing Di Beichen's attitude, He Mu couldn't help but explain. Young master, I express your attitude very clearly. Compared to Han Shiling and Bailey Hongzhuang, He Mu stood on Bailey Hongzhuang's side. Chapter 1045. In his opinion, Han Shiling was indeed good to the young lord in the past. When a young lord fell into the hands of the Fengbo king, Han Shiling still paid a lot of attention to the young lord. However, with Han Shiling's position in the Tiangang sect, as long as she did her best to help the young lord's situation would be better and he wouldn't even need to come to Fengbo country. What's more, in the past 3 years, Han Shiling had only brought a few words, but had never come to see the young master. Perhaps in the eyes of others, Han Shiling was already affectionate and loyal to the young lord, but in his opinion, this wasn't sincere enough. If the young lord couldn't stand up, if the young lord became a cripple, he believed that Han Shiling would definitely ignore it. The one who really helped the young lord stand up was Bailey Hongzhuang. If it wasn't for Bailey Hongzhuang's help, the young lord would probably still have that disappointed look in his eyes. Just this point alone made him unspeakably grateful to Bailey Hongzhuang. He had followed the young lord since he was young and had long regarded the young lord as the closest person. Therefore, Bailey Hongzhuang was his benefactor. I understand. Di Beichen smiled faintly and patted He Mu's shoulder. We will be staying in the blood-ground abyss for a few days. You can stay next door. Although He Mu had always been his secret guard, he didn't need to care about this in the blood-ground abyss. Hearing Di Beichen's words, He Mu's eyes flashed with joy. The young lord finally allowed him to follow by his side again. Thinking of this, He Mu was even more certain that the reason why the young lord disliked him previously was because he didn't know how to read the mood. This was good. Young lord, then I will leave first. Beichen nodded and waved his hand. Go. Heimu glanced at Bailey Hongzhuang again. Young madam, I will leave first. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Heimu helplessly. This Heimu was really diligent in calling her young madam now. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's shy and helpless expression, Beichen chuckled, a sly smile in his eyes. Wife, Heimu is talking to you. Why aren't you answering? Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang glared at Beichen. This guy's doing this on purpose. Ha! Beichen laughed out loud. His wife was not afraid of anything, but she was shy. She was really too cute. Seeing that the atmosphere between Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang was so harmonious, Heimu did not delay any longer and immediately left the room. Bailey Hongzhuang had already finished eating. She narrowed her eyes and stared at Beichen. You are doing this on purpose. Beichen shrugged his shoulders calmly. His hands encircled Bailey Hongzhuang in his embrace. His voice was low and bewitching. Heimu is right. You are my wife. Feeling Beichen's warm breath and his ambiguous words, Bailey Hongzhuang's cheeks blushed. Since you have boarded this pirate ship, don't think of running away in the future. Beichen's heart heated up. Bailey Hongzhuang's blushing cheeks were really too charming. That's not necessarily true. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her head, not to be outdone. Every time she was teased by Beichen like this, she was going to make a comeback. In the next moment, Beichen lowered his head and directly covered Bailey Hongzhuang's red lips. This kiss was gentle, full of tenderness, full of deep affection. Tossing and turning, it was also ecstatic. Chapter 1046. The next day, when Bailey Hongzhuang walked into the Blood Tower, everyone's eyes fell on Bailey Hongzhuang at the same time. They were completely speechless at this freak. She had actually passed the trial after 10 consecutive victories. Was she trying to kill them? In just one night, Bailey Hongzhuang's reputation had spread throughout the Bloodground Abyss. Although there were many cultivators who had passed the first level of the Bloodground Abyss, there were very few who could do what Bailey Hongzhuang had done. For a moment, many cultivators decided to avoid people like Bailey Hongzhuang if they could. At the very least, they were not confident that they could pass the trial after 10 consecutive victories. Therefore, when Bailey Hongzhuang walked into the blood refining pagoda, there was a moment of silence in the lobby. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was indifferent and distant in the face of everyone's gazes. She walked to the second level on her own. She no longer needed to stay on the first level. Everyone on the first level heaved a sigh of relief when they saw Bailey Hongzhuang leave. Bailey Hongzhuang was just too freakish. It was extremely good that she went to the second level as soon as possible. Chapter 1047. Slowly walking forward, Bailey Hongzhuang found a seat on the spectator stand and sat down. Miss, do you want a drink? As soon as Bailey Hongzhuang sat down, a female attendant walked to Bailey Hongzhuang and looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a sweet smile. Hearing that, Bailey Hongzhuang raised her head and looked at the female attendant. In the Blood-Chi Tower, the female attendant had a seductive charm no matter if it was the way she walked or the way she acted. It was really irresistible to men. Noticing that the surrounding cultivators were holding a wine glass, Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. Okay. The female attendant immediately handed the wine glass to Bailey Hongzhuang, and Bailey Hongzhuang placed it aside. She was not interested in fine wine, only the arena. On the arena, two cultivators were fighting to their heart's content. Back and forth, they were sweating profusely. Bailey Hongzhuang keenly noticed that the cultivators on the second floor were much stronger than the cultivators on the first floor. Moreover, their murderous aura was much denser. After all, it was not easy to obtain 10 consecutive victories on the first floor. This at least proved that they had killed 10 people to reach the second floor. Therefore, the murderous aura would be stronger. Bailey Hongzhuang looked indifferently at the battle in the ring. She had already made a decision. As long as this match was over, she would go on stage. She was afraid that the later trials would take a lot of time, so she was not willing to waste too much time here. Moreover, her philosophy was incompatible with the cultivators here, so it was better to end the battle earlier. However, Just as Bailey Hongzhuang was fighting, a woman walked in front of her. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her head and saw a woman in a bright red dress. The woman was about 23 years old. She had charming eyes and a charming posture. The neckline of the bright red dress was very low. As long as one paid a little attention, one could find her towering infinite charm. Bailey Hongzhuang's phoenix eyes slightly raised. She already had a certain understanding of the unrestrained environment of the blood-ground abyss. Just by looking at the appearance of this woman, she knew that this woman must have infinite charm in this blood-chi tower, because she had already felt that many people's eyes fell on this woman. Bailey Hongzhuang, I heard that you are very arrogant. The woman's lips evoked a sarcastic smile, but her smile was very skillful, so she still looked charming. As soon as the woman's words came out, Bailey Hongzhuang had already realized that this woman came to provoke her. For a while, everyone's eyes gathered on Bailey Hongzhuang's body. Bloody Rose had always been at the second floor of the Blood-Chi Tower. How many men had fallen under her pomegranate skirt? At this moment, Bloody Rose and Bailey Hongzhuang stood together. The combination of white and red really made people's eyes light up. Bailey Hongzhuang was indifferent, cold, noble, and alienated. It was a kind of feeling that made people yearn for infinitely. Many people wanted to know that Bailey Hongzhuang was so warm under this indifferent mask. Bloody Rose had always been enthusiastic. She was even more arrogant and bold in doing things. That charming charm was unforgettable for men. At this moment, the two people stood together, two charming and pure faces intertwined, which really made people yearn for it. In terms of appearance and temperament, Bloody Rose could not compare with Bailey Hongzhuang. However, this kind of charm that Bloody Rose had could be called men's favorite. What does it have to do with you? Chapter 1048. She would never be polite to people who took the initiative to provoke her. She didn't care why the woman came to trouble her. Since she was an enemy, there was no need to talk nonsense. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's indifferent attitude, Bloody Rose was stunned for a moment, and then the corners of her mouth opened again with a rich smile. You sure have guts. Even if it was a provocation, Bloody Rose's words were still full of charm, but there was a flash of resentment in the depths of her eyes. Originally, when she heard that a peerless beauty appeared on the first floor, she was also very curious. From the moment she appeared in the Blood Tower, she was called a peerless beauty by the people here. Although there were many women in the Bloodland Abyss, none of them could compare with her. She didn't expect that with the appearance of Bailey Hongzhuang today, the eyes of all the practitioners on the second floor of the Blood Tower fell on Bailey Hongzhuang, which made her, who had always been the center of attention of all men, a little uncomfortable. However, she could see a trace of pride and purity from Bailey Hongzhuang, which was what she didn't have and most envied. Therefore, she was very unhappy to see Bailey Hongzhuang. Put away your tricks. It works on men. I'm not interested. Bailey Hongzhuang looked indifferent. The charm of the woman's every move was undoubtedly to arouse the desire of the men present. But as a woman, she had no feeling at all. It was naturally good to be a sexy beauty, but she didn't think Bloody Rose was happy to be a promiscuous woman here. Even if she was pursued by men here, it was just the men's sweet words, which had no meaning at all. With Bailey Hongzhuang's voice fell, Bloody Rose's face became ugly for a moment. She didn't expect Bailey Hongzhuang to speak so ruthlessly, revealing everything in one sentence. Ha! Bloody Rose chuckled, but the smile didn't have any warmth. Bailey Hongzhuang, this is your first time in the Bloodground Abyss. Let me tell you from experience that being too arrogant here is not good for you. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Bloody Rose lazily. Cut the crap. What do you want to tell me? She was just watching the challenge tournament in the stands. As a result, this woman had been talking to her since she came. The problem was that Bloody Rose had said so many harsh words without telling her real purpose. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang's words were so harsh, Bloody Rose looked a little ugly. She wanted to show off her ability in front of Bailey Hongzhuang, but Bailey Hongzhuang was so stubborn that she didn't know what to say for a while. When everyone saw the conflict between Bloody Rose and Bailey Hongzhuang, their eyes were filled with curiosity. Bloody Rose and Bailey Hongzhuang are at odds. It seems that Bloody Rose is afraid that Bailey Hongzhuang will affect her status. Yes, over the years, Bloody Rose has always been the first beauty here. Bailey Hongzhuang is so outstanding that she even faintly overshadowed her limelight. It's normal for her to be dissatisfied. The characteristics of these two women are completely different, but if they really fight, I'm very curious about the result. Everyone drank and watched the play. The challenge tournament was good, and the confrontation between Bloody Rose and Bailey Hongzhuang was even better. Chapter 1049. I want you to get out of the Blood Chi Tower. Bloody Rose chuckled, but there was a cold arc in her eyes. She was full of disgust for Bailey Hongzhuang in any way. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Bloody Rose as if she was looking at an idiot. She didn't understand why this woman had inexplicably appeared and said something to her. She even told her to leave the Blood Chi Tower. What was she relying on? In the Blood Chi field, except for the arena, no one could fight in other places. Therefore, what Bloody Rose said would not work at all. What's more, even if Bloody Rose went to the arena with her, it would be to her liking. After all, she came to the second floor of the Blood Chi Tower today for the challenge tournament. Since Bloody Rose wanted to go to the arena, she could accompany her directly. Challenge tournament? Bailey Hongzhuang looked calm. No problem. Listening to Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Bloody Rose suddenly laughed, shaking with laughter. She glanced at the practitioners around her with infinite amorous feelings. I, Bloody Rose, want you to get out of the Blood Chi field. Do I need to do it myself? It's stupid for a woman to rely on herself for everything. I only need to say a word, and these men will fight for me. Can you do it? Looking at Bloody Rose's complacent look, Bailey Hongzhuang looked around. Indeed, many men seemed to be waiting for Bloody Rose's call. After seeing Bloody Rose's amorous appearance, the other women present could not help but feel a trace of envy in their hearts. In this Blood Chi field, the most famous woman was Bloody Rose. However, they could not compare with Bloody Rose's amorous feelings at all. She had always been the focus of everyone here. However, in the face of Bloody Rose's provocation, Bailey Hongzhuang did not take it to heart at all. You let others work for you. Naturally, you have to pay something. I can do it, but I don't want to pay. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was calm. The world had always been so fair. She knew very well why these men were willing to work for Bloody Rose. It wasn't that she couldn't do it, but she wasn't willing to do it. Most importantly, she never felt that there was anything wrong with relying on her own strength. On the contrary, relying on her own strength was the best. With Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Bloody Rose was stunned for a moment. Bailey Hongzhuang's words directly hit the point. Indeed, she had lived in the blood-ground abyss for so long, so she was very familiar with these things. It was precisely because of this that she hated Bailey Hongzhuang's arrogance and purity. She found her to be an eyesore. Once upon a time, she was also such a person. But now everything had changed. She came to the blood-ground abyss because all the women here were the same as her. Not only that, all the women here envied her. However, she actually envied Bailey Hongzhuang. Bloody Rose was stunned for a short moment. Soon, she returned to her usual enchanting appearance. Don't be so proud of yourself. You just don't have that kind of ability. Bloody Rose smiled enchantingly and looked at the surrounding cultivators. Who is willing to compete with Bailey Hongzhuang for me? As soon as the voice came out, the eyes of all the cultivators present were filled with excitement. Bloody Rose, I'll help you. Where did this kid come from? How can Bloody Rose need your help? I'll do it. Chapter 1050. Almost at the same time, all the men present stood up and expressed their willingness to work for the Bloody Rose, because no one could stop the style of the Bloody Rose. But over the years, it was more and more difficult to gain the favor of the Bloody Rose. Now that the Bloody Rose spoke again, they naturally could not miss this opportunity. After seeing this scene, the women on the second floor of the Blood Tower also showed envious expressions. If one day they could be admired by all men like the Bloody Rose, that would be their biggest dream. The Bloody Rose looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with an enchanting smile, and her raised eyebrows revealed an enchanting posture. Now do you understand? This is the gap between you and me. The Bloody Rose raised her chin, and her posture was very proud. This was her charm. In the Blood Tower, she was the most charming woman, and no one could compare with her. Bailey Hongzhuang's appearance was a threat to her position. Towards women she didn't like, she was never polite. She would destroy all the women who were better than herself. Because she was the best. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the arrogant, bloody Rose in front of her, and a sneer appeared on her lips. Everyone had their own pursuits. She admitted that the bloody Rose was indeed very charming, but this could not make her envious at all. On the contrary, she felt that such a bloody Rose was ridiculous and pitiful. What was more, the bloody Rose came to trouble her, so she naturally would not be polite. On the first floor of the Blood Tower, she saw a group of crazy men, and on the second floor of the Blood Tower, she saw a group of crazy women. On this kind of thing, she was not willing to argue with the bloody Rose, because the bloody Rose had already been blinded and could not see anything else. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang did not say more, the bloody Rose only thought that Bailey Hongzhuang was afraid of her, and she was more proud. She immediately chuckled and said, "Is there anyone here who is willing to fight for Bailey Hongzhuang?" The bloody Rose was sure that in front of her, no man would stand up for Bailey Hongzhuang. However, as soon as the bloody Rose's voice came out, a low and magnetic voice sounded. His deep and magnetic voice was filled with charm and dominance. Just listening to this voice was unforgettable. Everyone looked in the direction of the voice at the same time. They wanted to see who was the one who said that. There was a slight anger in the eyes of Bloody Rose. She was in a bad mood. She wanted to see who dared to disrespect her. However, when Bloody Rose saw the person clearly, she was absent-minded for a moment. She boasted that she had seen many men in her life, but this was the first time she had seen such a noble and elegant man. He was like a blazing sun, attracting everyone's attention the moment he appeared, becoming the focus of everyone's attention. His nobility seemed to be innate. Just by standing there, it was as if he was high up and looked down on everything. She had never seen such a noble and extraordinary man. Just one look was enough to make people want to submit to him. Di Beichen walked to the side of Bailey Hongzhuang and stood still. He put one hand directly on Bailey Hongzhuang's shoulder and said, "I will fight for her." A sharp light flashed through the deep and charming eyes. This woman dared to make sarcastic remarks about his wife. Chapter 1051. After everyone saw Di Beichen appear, all the practitioners on the second floor of the Blood Chi Tower were stunned for a moment. Just by looking at this man's temperament, they could feel that this man was extraordinary. This was an innate temperament which could not be imitated by others. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Beichen beside her in surprise. She did not expect that Di Beichen would suddenly appear. It was really beyond her expectation. Di Beichen looked at the doubt in Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes, and the corners of his mouth raised in an evil and perfect arc. He understood what Bailey Hongzhuang was thinking. Although he had said that as long as Bailey Hongzhuang wasn't in danger, he wouldn't make a move. However, the situation now was different. The Bloody Rose was laughing at his wife's lack of charm. At this time, as her husband, if he did not stand up, wouldn't he allow other women to bully his wife? Although he knew that with Bailey Hongzhuang's temperament, she wouldn't take it to heart. However, just because Bailey Hongzhuang didn't care, it didn't mean that he didn't care. Although Bailey Hongzhuang was a little surprised, she also knew that Di Beichen was standing up for her. Her beautiful and refined face slowly bloomed with a smile. This man really could not bear to see her suffer any grievances. At the moment when Bailey Hongzhuang showed a smile, the men present all looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with infatuation. They had never seen Bailey Hongzhuang smile. Her previous cold appearance made them feel holy, which could only be seen from a distance and could not be touched. However, at this moment, Bailey Hongzhuang's smile was like a melting snow mountain with a shocking beauty. If Bailey Hongzhuang's previous frosty appearance was similar to the amorous feelings of the Bloody Rose in their eyes, now Bailey Hongzhuang's sweet smile had completely defeated the Bloody Rose. Such a Bloody Rose could not be compared with Bailey Hongzhuang at all, because the charm could be practiced, but the appearance and temperament could not be imitated. "My God, I didn't expect Bailey Hongzhuang to be so beautiful when she smiles. My heart is melting. Who is this man? Bailey Hongzhuang let him hold her. If I had known this, I would have been the first to answer when the Bloody Rose asked. I heard that this man and Bailey Hongzhuang know each other. He should be Bailey Hongzhuang's lover. Yesterday, Bailey Hongzhuang made too much noise on the first floor of the Blood Chi Tower, so when she left, there were many practitioners' attention. Everyone noticed that Bailey Hongzhuang walked into the inn with a man. Obviously, that man should be the man in front of them. After knowing the relationship between Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun, everyone was a little envious, but they had to admit that Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun were a match made in heaven. The Bloody Rose looked at the handsome man in front of her in a daze. She only felt that her heart, which had not beat for so many years, beat again after seeing this man. This man seemed to have the power to capture people's souls. Even if he just looked at her indifferently, she could not control her heartbeat. However, after seeing Di Beichun's gentle and doting smile to Bailey Hongzhuang, a strong jealousy emerged in her eyes. Chapter 1052. Although her heart had been swept by this jealousy, Bloody Rose also recovered her original look in a very short time. She asked herself that Bailey Hongzhuang's style couldn't be compared with hers at all. Only she was a woman who could really make a man want and be unable to give up. As long as she played a little trick, this man would definitely fall under her pomegranate skirt. Over the years, such examples were too numerous to mention. She had absolute confidence in herself. The next moment, Bloody Rose directly approached Di Beichun. The tempting plump directly touched Di Beichun's arm. Her smile was enchanting and charming. "Young master, how should I address you?" Bloody Rose's phoenix eyes narrowed slightly. She looked at Di Beichun with a blurred look. The seduction in her look was obvious. It was rare to see such a tempting man. She would never give up. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Bloody Rose like this. Her expression also changed a little. Her deep phoenix eyes were filled with a trace of coldness. She suddenly felt that her disgust for Bloody Rose had increased a level. Di Beichun frowned slightly. Bloody Rose's posture was also beyond his expectation. There was an unconcealable disgust in his eyes. Perhaps for other men, Bloody Rose's posture was called amorous. But for him, except for his wife, all other women were nothingness. Just as Di Beichun was about to break away from Bloody Rose, Bailey Hongzhuang made a move that surprised people. Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly pulled out the hairpin in her hair. Her hair fell down in an instant, making her, who was originally arrogant and indifferent, have a charming woman's posture. Her beautiful face was filled with an enchanting and charming smile. Bailey Hongzhuang also held Di Beichun's shoulder. Her blurred eyes were full of infinite amorous feelings. Everyone was surprised to find that as long as Bailey Hongzhuang removed that layer of unapproachable coldness, even if she didn't do anything, she was still a seductive beauty, making it impossible for people to turn their eyes away. Her every move was full of infinite amorous feelings, mixed with purity and charm, coldness and heat. This contradictory and extreme temperament appeared on her at the same time, making everyone realize what was called real charm. The next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang made a bold move in front of everyone. She suddenly stood on tiptoe, her red lips close to Di Beichun's ear, and gently breathed. "Am I charming, or is she charming?" Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's seductive appearance, Di Beichun's eyes also flashed a hidden desire. He had always been a person with strong self-control, but in the face of Bailey Hongzhuang, he felt that all his self-control was collapsing. This woman was born to be his nemesis. All the men present unconsciously swallowed a mouthful of saliva. Di Beichun didn't need to answer. Everyone could help him answer. "My God, this Bailey Hongzhuang is simply a seductress." I didn't expect Bailey Hongzhuang to have such a side. Bloody Rose can't be compared with Bailey Hongzhuang at all. If I can have such a woman, it's worth it to live a few decades less. Everyone looked at Di Beichun enviously. This woman was the real stunner. Chapter 1053. Heimu looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in a daze. This young master's wife was too powerful. With the young master's wife's usual shy and indifferent character, Such a thing was completely impossible. He didn't expect that this time, under the provocation of Bloody Rose, she really went all out. Not to mention the young master. He was also blushing, and his heart was beating fast. As for Bloody Rose, this kind of woman was not at the same level as the young master's wife at all. No matter from which point of view, the young master's wife was really charming and hard to resist. Over the years, he had seen a lot of famous ladies around the young master, but he swore that he thought the most charming woman was the young master's wife. Even if everyone said that Han Shieling was outstanding and was an outstanding figure among the young generation of women, he felt that the young master's wife was not as famous as Han Shieling because the young master's wife had not yet appeared in the eyes of others. When the young master brought the young master's wife back to Tiangang, he believed that many people would stand on the side of the young master's wife. Bloody Rose looked at Bailey Hongzhuang like this and was also stunned. It was reasonable to say that with Bailey Hongzhuang's temperament, it should be impossible to do such a thing, but Bailey Hongzhuang did it. In fact, her charm was not inferior to hers at all. She knew that her appearance was not as good as Bailey Hongzhuang. She thought that she could compete with Bailey Hongzhuang by relying on her charm, but now after seeing Bailey Hongzhuang like this, she understood that she could not compare with Bailey Hongzhuang. Di Beichen did not hesitate to push away Bloody Rose with disgust and contempt. If he had not come to the Bloodland Abyss, he would not have seen this kind of woman at all. His eyes did not even stay on Bloody Rose for a moment. Di Beichen's attention was all on his little goblin. He lowered his voice and said in Bailey Hongzhuang's ear, "Wife, you seduce your husband like this. Are you hinting something to your husband?" Listening to Di Beichen's ambiguous and suggestive words, Bailey Hongzhuang's cheeks were quickly covered with a blush, and she glanced at Di Beichen. "You think too much." However, even if Bailey Hongzhuang just glanced at Di Beichen casually, and Di Beichen's eyes were full of infinite flirtatious feelings. His wife, no matter what she did, could completely attract his heart. The whole second floor of the Bloodland Tower became quiet, and everyone's eyes fell on Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen. Obviously, these two people had become the focus of attention here, and Di Beichen had become the object of envy of all the men present. "I heard that you want to find someone to compete with my wife." Di Beichen hugged Bailey Hongzhuang's slender waist, domineeringly declaring his identity, and his cold eyes fell on Bloody Rose. This woman humiliated his wife in such a way, but in the end, he was defeated. Listening to Di Beichen's words, Bloody Rose was furious. She finally fell in love with a man after so many years, but now this man disdained her. What was more infuriating was that this man turned out to be Bailey Hongzhuang's husband. Thinking of this, Bloody Rose's eyes flashed with anger and determination. She immediately stood up and said to the people present, "Whoever helps me win this game, I will be his tonight." Chapter 1054. From the situation of Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen, it was obvious that these two people were not very easy to deal with. It would be difficult to get Bailey Hongzhuang. Although the Blood Rose couldn't be compared to Bailey Hongzhuang, compared to other women, this Blood Rose was also a rare top-quality product. Usually, they could not get this opportunity even if they wanted to. Now that they finally had this opportunity, they naturally would not let it go. Seeing Bloody Rose directly give such benefits, Bailey Hongzhuang was also somewhat speechless. What was the point of using such a way to sell oneself to win? Although Bailey Hongzhuang felt that Bloody Rose was somewhat pitiful, but a pitiful person must have something hateful. All this depravity was her own choice. Even she did not want to save herself. How could others help? Therefore, even the trace of sympathy in her heart was erased, because there was no need. "Bloody Rose, I'll help you fight. Bloody Rose, I'll do it." A group of men were like hungry wolves, looking at Bloody Rose with green eyes. Obviously, Bloody Rose was a delicious cake in their eyes. After seeing this scene, Bloody Rose, who had been slightly hit, smiled again. At least, in the hearts of these men, her position had not changed. Bailey Hongzhuang looked up at Di Beichen. She did not know whether Di Beichen was really ready to go to the ring or just joking. After all, the person who really wanted to participate in the challenge tournament today was her. However, Di Bei-chun had shown his thoughts with actions. He would not allow anyone to treat his wife with such an attitude. When a man was needed to appear, he naturally would not let Hong Zhuang deal with it alone. Di Bei-chun stood on the ring. That noble and handsome face was filled with indifference and indifference. He did not say anything, but there was a terrifying momentum that filled the air. Just like when he appeared, it made people unconsciously panic. However, this sluggishness only lasted for a short period of time. Very quickly, a man took the lead and leaped onto the stage. Youngsters nowadays are getting more and more arrogant. I'll teach you a lesson and let you know that you should keep a low profile when you're young. A 25-year-old man appeared in front of Di Bei-chun. The man was thin and wretched like a monkey. His gaze towards Di Bei-chun was filled with malice. As a man himself, he hated arrogant guys like Di Bei-chun the most. It was as if he was the most powerful person in the world. He liked Bloody Rose for a long time. Although Bloody Rose was passionate, she was neither friendly nor distant to everyone. It was not easy to be with Bloody Rose. However, the man just appeared today, and the Bloody Rose began to take the initiative to throw herself into his arms, which made him very dissatisfied. He wanted to prove to Bloody Rose that the guy in front of her was a good-for-nothing except for his appearance. However, Di Bei-chun had no intention of responding to the man's words. This kind of guy was not even worthy to talk to him. The referee quickly recorded the identities of the two people, but after hearing the words that Di Bei-chun whispered in his ear, the referee's expression clearly froze for a moment, revealing shock and astonishment, as if he couldn't believe what he had heard. Chapter 1055. However, the referee's next words completely stunned everyone. This is a private battle, so no bets are allowed. Now let the battle begin. As soon as his voice fell, the referee walked down the stage, leaving the entire ring to Di Bei-chun and Di Bei-chun. Everyone stared at the judge in surprise. They did not understand why the judge would suddenly say something like that. After all, the judges of the Blood Chi Tower had always been extraordinary existences. They were impervious to everything and had a certain status in the blood-ground abyss. Normally, no one could make a judge do something out of line. However, Di Bei-chun had only whispered something into the judge's ear, and the judge had made such a decision. It was just too unbelievable. Although most of the time, cultivators who did not know each other would fight in the arena, there would definitely be many people who would settle the grudges between four people. This kind of competition with grudges between four people was usually very interesting to watch, and there had never been a situation where no bets were placed. However, the judge had actually said something like that. It was just too unbelievable. After seeing this scene, Bailey Hongzhuang's clear eyes were also filled with surprise. Although she hadn't stayed in the bloody abyss for a long time, according to her understanding during this period of time, such a situation shouldn't have happened. Di Bei-chun had changed the judge's mind with just a few words. Could it be that Di Bei-chun had a certain status in the Blood Chi Tower? Bailey Hongzhuang was rather confused. In fact, it would not have mattered even if she participated in the arena. That way, she could even make a fortune here. There was only one reason why Di Bei-chun had done this, and that was that he did not want other cultivators to know his name. Why? Could it be Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes lit up? She immediately understood why Di Bei-chun had done this. Thinking about it, Di Bei-chun must have shocked everyone when he obtained the Blood Chi Tower's legacy. His name was like thunder in the blood-ground abyss now. If everyone knew his name now, he was worried that no one in the blood-ground abyss would dare to make a move on her. In this way, her experience here would lose a lot of excitement. After understanding this point, Bailey Hongzhuang was also very impressed with Di Bei-chun because this man had seen through everything in a short time and even planned everything for her. However, the three beasts did not care about Di Bei-chun's reason at all. They were completely immersed in their own emotions. Di Bei-chun's move is different. He can directly break the rules of the Blood Chi Tower. These cultivators are completely scared. Xiaohei jumped in joy. Every time Di Bei-chun made a move, it was very happy. It felt very uncomfortable when Bloody Rose was so arrogant before. Now in this situation, they had completely won. That Bloody Rose is also asking for humiliation. Why can't she compare her beauty with anyone else? Yet he wants to compete with Master. Isn't he courting death? Xiaobai was also very proud. What kind of person was Master? Bloody Rose and Master were not at the same level at all. In the face of Xiao He and Xiao Bai's excited words, Bai Shi just kept nodding in agreement. When it came to eloquence, it could not compare with Xiao He and Xiao Bai. Chapter 1056. Bloody Rose's eyes could not help but fall on Bailey Hongzhuang. Since Bailey Hongzhuang appeared here, she felt uncomfortable all over. Originally, the second floor of the Blood Chi Tower was her world. She had never had a problem driving anyone away. However, Bailey Hongzhuang had become a great variable. The man who suddenly appeared beside Bailey Hongzhuang also showed absolute extraordinariness. She had been in the Blood Chi Tower for a long time. Over the years, she had never seen a person like Di Beichun, who could make the referee obey him with only one word. His identity was probably extremely amazing. The Blood Chi Tower had always been a magical place. The Blood Chi Tower had existed in the Bloodland Abyss for so long, and the money it had earned was simply amazing. However, no one knew where the money flowed to. Was it possible that Di Beichun had a connection with the owner of the Blood Chi Tower? Thinking of this possibility, Bloody Rose felt that it was incredible. It was really incredible. However, apart from this, she could not think of any other reason. No matter what the reason was, even if Di Beichun had bribed the referee, Di Beichun could do this, which had proved that Di Beichun was extraordinary. Over the years, it was not that no one had tried to bribe the referee, but no one had been able to do it. In the arena, Di Beichun looked at the man in front of him indifferently. Even though the competition had begun, his leisurely appearance did not seem like he was going to fight at all. Faced with Di Beichun's indifference, the man had been angry. He wanted to teach Di Beichun a good lesson, but he did not expect that Di Beichun would be so arrogant. On the contrary, he did not know what to do. Since you were so arrogant, let's see who's the real deal. The man's eyes were as cold as a viper's. He wished he could kill Di Beichun immediately, because such disregard was a form of humiliation. However, Di Beichun didn't think that way at all. Such an opponent couldn't arouse his interest at all. He was just waiting for the man to attack first. However, the man spoke so much nonsense but didn't make a move, which made him feel a little helpless. Finally, when the man could no longer endure Di Beichun's indifference and contempt, the origin energy in his body instantly surged out. His body moved violently and directly charged towards Di Beichun. He wanted to let Di Beichun know how powerful he was. When the cultivators in the stands saw the man's posture, a hint of surprise appeared in their eyes. They did not expect that this man looked so ordinary, but his strength was not weak. Bloody Rose's eyes also fell on the high platform. Although the man showed good strength, she faintly felt that the man seemed to be no match for Di Beichun at all. Compared with the curious appearance of the crowd, Bailey Hongzhuang and He Mu looked very indifferent. This was a battle without any suspense at all. If Di Beichun lost, it would be a great miracle. Even though the man had already rushed to Di Beichun, Di Beichun's noble and handsome face still did not show any ripples, and he did not even raise his eyes. Naked contempt, without any concealment. Seeing Di Beichun's attitude, the crowd was speechless for a while. Chapter 1057. Everyone looked at Di Beichun with disdain. The bearing that Di Beichun showed before was indeed extraordinary, but at this time, he still only cared about putting on an act. That was too stupid. The man's fist fiercely attacked Di Beichun's neck. From the light of the elemental energy that burst out, everyone had no doubt that once the man's fist landed, Di Beichun's life would not be guaranteed. As his fist got closer and closer to Di Beichun, the man's eyes flashed with excitement. He couldn't wait for Di Beichun to continue being so arrogant and continue to stand in the same place as a target for him to defeat. In this way, his reputation in the Blood Chi Tower would also spread, and Bloody Rose would also become his woman. At the thought of this, the man couldn't help but feel excited. Just when the man was very close to Di Beichun suddenly made a move. With just a casual finger, Di Beichun pressed against the man's glabella. Then, the whole ring seemed to be stagnant. Everyone saw that the man suddenly stopped moving. His fist was only a few centimeters away from Di Baichen's neck, but the man's fist didn't move forward. What's going on? Is he stupid? As long as his fist moved forward a little, he would have succeeded. Only a few cultivators with good eyesight had a look of disbelief in their eyes. Di Baichen had just casually pointed finger. They hadn't even seen the fluctuation of elemental energy, but the power of this finger was actually so great. In the next moment, Di Baichen withdrew his finger and looked at the crowd below the ring. Is there anyone else who wants to come up? Everyone was puzzled to see that after Di Baichen left, the man still maintained his previous motionless action. It was really strange. Bang! Suddenly, the sound of a heavy object falling to the ground was heard. Everyone saw that the man's figure fell straight to the ground, and there was no sound at all. Seeing this scene, everyone present showed a shocked look. Judging from the aura that this man exuded before, this man's strength was not weak. Who would have thought that such a simple finger would instantly kill this man? Then, how strong was Di Baichen? Bloody Rose stared at the tall golden figure on the high platform. Although she was angry, she was more appreciative and admiring. Such a perfect man with looks, temperament, and strength was simply every woman's dream. However, the more outstanding Di Baichen was, the more jealous she was of Bailey Hongzhuang. This woman was actually his wife. She admitted that Di Baichen was extraordinary, but she didn't want to admit that Bailey Hongzhuang was also extraordinary. She knew in her heart that only a woman like Bailey Hongzhuang was truly worthy of Di Baichen, but she just couldn't accept it. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a smile, and Di Baichen's figure was reflected in her deep black eyes. She had to admit that this man was really perfect, especially at the moment when he stood up for her. He shone brightly, and no one could compare with him. Di Baichen looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a faint smile. His wife's expression just now was clearly seen by him. Feeling Di Baichen's gaze, Bailey Hongzhuang restrained her expression and just smiled faintly. Who else? Di Baichen asked again. However, everyone looked at the dead man on the stage, and no one had the courage to stand up. Chapter 1058. Bloody Rose glanced at all the men present, but found that everyone was hesitant. Undoubtedly, they were frightened by Di Baichen's strength. None of you dare to go up? Bloody Rose could not hide the anger in her eyes. She looked at all the people present with dissatisfaction. She did not expect these people to be so cowardly. In the face of Bloody Rose's eyes, although some practitioners were very hesitant, they finally chose to give up. Although beautiful women were good, they also needed to be alive to enjoy them. If Di Baichen had just finished the battle with the man, they might still have the courage to stand up. However, Di Baichen's performance just now was really amazing. They didn't know how Di Baichen did it. In the face of such an unbreakable finger, they could only choose to give up. Bailey Hongzhuang's hands were around her chest. Her delicate chin was slightly raised, and her eyes were full of provocation when she looked at Bloody Rose. Noticing Bailey Hongzhuang's provocation, Bloody Rose's face had turned purple. Previously, she was still clamoring for Bailey Hongzhuang to get out of the Blood Tower. She did not expect that in a short time, it seemed that she and Bailey Hongzhuang's identity had been exchanged. Di Baichen saw that no one dared to come up to challenge again, and then he walked down from the martial arts arena. He did not intend to fight with these people too much. Since these people were so sensible, it saved him a lot of effort. Di Baichen slowly walked to Bailey Hongzhuang's side. His deep and bright eyes were filled with a faint smile. Today, he saw another side of his wife. With Bailey Hongzhuang's character, if it was a normal day, she would not compete with Bloody Rose at all. The reason why she did that just now was probably because of him. At the thought of Bailey Hongzhuang, who was usually indifferent and alienated, becoming a kitten that had been baring its fangs and brandishing its claws for him, the smile in his eyes could not help but deepen. His wife, after all, cared about him very much. Bloody Rose looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen, who were standing together, and the jealousy in her eyes gradually deepened. The appearance of these two people brought her incomparable irony. Bailey Hongzhuang glanced at Bloody Rose faintly. Even if you are here, So what if there are more men who agree with you? You can't even compare to my husband." As soon as these words came out, Bloody Rose's face suddenly became livid. Bailey Hongzhuang was slapping her in the face. Indeed, she had originally thought that her popularity in the Blood Chi Tower was unparalleled. So many men were willing to give up everything for her. But now, the appearance of Di Beichun actually made these people shrink their heads. So what if she had the adoration of thousands of men? She couldn't compare to the one and only one. After Di Beichun heard Bailey Hongzhuang's words, he tightened his grip around Bailey Hongzhuang's waist. His wife actually called him husband in front of everyone. Usually, Bailey Hongzhuang had never called him that. There was a trace of joy in his heart. He only felt that when Bailey Hongzhuang said these two words, it was particularly lovely. "What are you proud of?" Bloody Rose's face was gloomy. "Didn't you say that you were very powerful? Don't you rely on men in the end?" Bloody Rose's mind was full of thoughts. She was absolutely unwilling to lose to Bailey Hongzhuang like this. Looking at Bloody Rose's hateful appearance, Bailey Hongzhuang looked indifferent. In fact, if it were not for Bloody Rose's continuous provocation, she would not bother to pay attention to it. Chapter 1059. After saying that, Bailey Hongzhuang did not look at Bloody Rose. At this moment, Bloody Rose was like a clown. She was too lazy to pay attention to her. Raising her phoenix-like eyes slightly, Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Beichun. She came here today for the challenge tournament. But the sudden appearance of Bloody Rose delayed her plan. Now it was time to continue the battle. Noticing Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes, Di Beichun immediately understood and nodded immediately. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. Her beautiful face was even more beautiful. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun's tacit understanding, Bloody Rose was even more jealous. Ordinary people would not have this kind of tacit understanding at all. Then, Bailey Hongzhuang went directly to the arena. Her indifferent eyes glanced at the practitioners present and said, "Who wants to come up?" As soon as she said that, the practitioners present could not help but be stunned. They did not expect that Bailey Hongzhuang dared to go to the arena at this moment. They could not defeat Di Beichun, but it was not difficult to defeat Bailey Hongzhuang. After seeing Bailey Hongzhuang do this, Bloody Rose's eyes showed a touch of joy. What she wanted was for Bailey Hongzhuang to do this. As long as Bailey Hongzhuang died in the arena, then all these problems would not exist. Whoever can defeat her, my promise is still effective. With Bloody Rose's words, a touch of passion flashed in the eyes of the practitioners present again. Previously, they were really frightened by Di Beichun's strength. However, Bailey Hongzhuang's strength could not be as strong as Di Beichun's. Defeating Bailey Hongzhuang was much easier than defeating Di Beichun. As for killing Bailey Hongzhuang, such a great beauty, if they really wanted to kill her, they really couldn't bear it. Perhaps he could even take advantage of Bailey Hongzhuang in this arena. With such a stunning beauty, as long as he could take advantage of her, it would be a great joy. Although Di Beichun was very strong, other than the arena, no one was allowed to fight in the Blood Chi Tower, so they didn't need to worry. Hence, when the crowd saw Bailey Hongzhuang walk up to the stage, they began to stir. In the blink of an eye, a man had already leaped onto the stage. "Beauty, I'll compete with you." The referee walked up to the ring and recorded the identities of Bailey Hongzhuang and the man. Soon, the betting odds were out. However, based on their battle records, the man's odds were lower than Bailey Hongzhuang's. This meant that the Blood Chi Tower was more optimistic about the man's strength. Seeing this, the cultivators present began to place their bets one after another. After what happened just now, they were even more interested in this match. Di Beichun gave Heimu a look. Heimu immediately understood and immediately walked to the betting area. At this time, he naturally bet on the young madam winning. The crowd also realized that Heimu was Di Beichun's follower. When they saw Heimu throw in a large amount of gold coins, the crowd's expression changed. It seemed that Bailey Hongzhuang and Bailey Hongzhuang not only had an extraordinary bearing and great strength, but their financial resources were also very shocking. This amount was already considered a huge bet in the Blood Chi Tower. After placing his bet, Hey Mu returned to Baichin's side, and the two of them sat down in the spectator's stand. Chapter 1060. The female attendants on the second floor of the Bloodchi Tower had already regarded Baichin as their Prince Charming. This man was simply every woman's Prince Charming. In a moment, the group of women had already made Bailey Hongzhuang their new target, just as Bailey Hongzhuang had said. So what if there were so many men here who adored her? It would be better to capture Baichin alone. This was because Baichin alone was more important than all the men present. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the man in front of her. The man was about 23 years old and had a perfectly round body, which made him look even shorter than he already was. He stood there like a winter melon, but his narrow eyes flickered with a shrewd and lecherous light. At this moment, he looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with an unbridled gaze, obviously intending to take advantage of Bailey Hongzhuang in this competition. Of course, this man was not the only one who had such thoughts. Many of the men present had the same thought. If they could take advantage of this competition to get close to Bailey Hongzhuang, it would be a great joy for them. Noticing the lecherous light in his eyes, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes flashed with disgust. She hated this kind of gaze the most. It made her feel uncomfortable from the bottom of her heart. Let the competition begin. Following the referee's command, Bailey Hongzhuang and the man immediately got into position. Bailey Hongzhuang did not intend to waste too much time with the man. She wanted to end this battle quickly. Hence, Bailey Hongzhuang's figure flew over and did not give the man any time to think. She suddenly attacked. At this moment, Bailey Hongzhuang did not take out the colored glaze sword. Yesterday's battle with the 4 bronze men in the trial had given her some insights. She could take advantage of today's opportunity to integrate her insights. This was one of the great benefits of the Bloodground Abyss. In this place, there was no need to worry about not having opponents. When a man saw that Bailey Hongzhuang was preparing to engage in close combat with him, the excitement in his eyes became even more intense. This was what he was looking forward to the most. When the men present saw Bailey Hongzhuang's decision, their hearts were filled with envy. If they had known that there would be such an opportunity, they would have rushed up first. Now this fatty had actually taken advantage of them. Bloody Rose's lips raised a sneer, as if she was mocking Bailey Hongzhuang's behavior. Bailey Hongzhuang had pretended to be aloof before, but now she actually used such a method to fight. Wasn't this equivalent to slapping her own face? Bloody Rose turned around and wanted to know what kind of expression Baichin would have after seeing such a situation. After all, Bailey Hongzhuang's current approach was suspicious of ambiguity. However, Bloody Rose looked at Baichin's indifferent appearance, as if Bailey Hongzhuang's approach had not exceeded his expectations at all. Thinking of this, Bloody Rose could not help but frown. It was reasonable to say that any man who saw this scene would not be able to bear it. The next second, Bloody Rose suddenly got up and walked to Baichin's side and sat down. There were many cultivators near the stands, but because of Baichin's previous display of strength, no one dared to approach. Therefore, the position next to Baichin was empty. Chapter 1061. Feeling Baichin's disregard, Bloody Rose's expression did not change, which was not beyond her expectation. Your wife doesn't seem to be so pure. Bloody Rose spoke slowly, but her eyes were constantly looking at Baichin, wanting to know Baichin's thoughts. Baichin turned his eyes and looked at Bloody Rose beside him. His handsome chin, which was as sharp as a knife, showed a cold and hard arc, and the words he said were even colder and more heartless. "Stay away from me." As soon as the words came out, Bloody Rose's face was stiff for a moment. She did not expect Baichin to speak so coldly and impolitely. "Do you think it's not good for me?" Bloody Rose asked tentatively. According to her understanding over the years, men should like her amorous feelings. Why was the man in front of her not interested in her at all? "My wife is not someone you can compare with. Get out." Baichin's voice was cold, with warning and no doubt. With Baichin's voice falling, Bloody Rose only felt that her whole body was shrouded by a kind of pressure, and she was so scared that she could not move. This man's momentum was really amazing. The most important thing was that the man showed disgust and decisiveness, which deeply hurt her heart. It was obvious that other women could not get into his heart except Bailey Hongzhuang. Thinking of this, Bloody Rose could not help but feel jealous and disappointed. But in the face of Di Beichen's overbearing and decisive words, she did not dare to continue to stay here. Looking at Di Beichen's indifferent and decisive eyes, she had no doubt that if she continued to stand here, Di Beichen would never be polite to her. Bloody Rose stood up awkwardly and returned to her previous place. She was just not reconciled. It was rare for her to see a man who could make her surrender over the years, but this man did not like her at all. After seeing that Bloody Rose failed to seduce Di Beichen one after another, people's expressions change a little. However, in the eyes of more people, Bloody Rose was indeed not worthy of Di Beichen. Blackwood looked at Bloody Rose, who was leaving. There was a trace of mockery in his eyes. A woman like her wouldn't even have the chance to talk to the young lord normally. Now, she actually wanted to be the young lord's woman. How ridiculous! On the stage, Bailey Hongzhuang was already fighting with a man at lightning speed. With yesterday's enlightenment, she was able to fight with the man much more smoothly today. The man's cultivation was also at the 4th level of the Red Realm, so it was not difficult for her. Even without using any martial skills, Bailey Hongzhuang dealt with them extremely quickly. Suddenly, Bailey Hongzhuang turned around and grabbed the man's hand. She pulled hard and the man's hand was dislocated. The man turned sideways and tried to escape from Bailey Hongzhuang's control. However, he did not expect that Bailey Hongzhuang would directly chop him in the neck. Bang! Bailey Hongzhuang was merciless. With a chop, the man fell heavily to the ground and fainted immediately. Everyone thought that the man could take advantage of this opportunity to take advantage of Bailey Hongzhuang. They did not expect that Bailey Hongzhuang would make the man have no chance to take advantage of her at all. On the contrary, Bailey Hongzhuang's attack was extremely neat, and her close combat ability was obviously excellent. Bailey Hongzhuang wins. Chapter 1062. After the referee announced the result, Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curved into a faint smile as she looked at Di Beichen. Di Beichen nodded to Bailey Hongzhuang with appreciation in his eyes. He could feel the changes in Bailey Hongzhuang after she came to the Bloodland Abyss. Her progress was very good. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's progress, he was also very pleased. His woman would become stronger little by little. After everyone saw that Bailey Hongzhuang defeated the cultivator at the 4th level of the Red Realm so easily, there was a touch of surprise in their eyes. They already knew yesterday that Bailey Hongzhuang defeated Xiong Kai at the 6th level of the Red Realm, but they did not take it seriously. Because, even if the cultivation was high, the strength was not necessarily strong. They were able to reach the 2nd floor of the Bloodchi Tower and had experienced a lot of competitions. Such examples were not unheard of. On the contrary, there were many. It was precisely because of this that when they heard the news, they only thought that Bailey Hongzhuang's opponent was too weak, but they never thought that Bailey Hongzhuang was too strong. At this moment, seeing Bailey Hongzhuang winning so easily, they felt that their previous ideas might be a little wrong. Bailey Hongzhuang was not very weak. Bloody Rose's face was also a little ugly. What she wanted to see was Bailey Hongzhuang being defeated and rolling down the ring. It would be best if Bailey Hongzhuang died directly in the ring. However, things did not go as she wished. Bailey Hongzhuang won. After winning a game, Bailey Hongzhuang did not directly go down the ring, but continued to say, "Who's next?" Since others said that she was arrogant, she would be arrogant all the way here. Arrogance was never a problem. The problem was that she dared to be arrogant without strength. Obviously, she was not such a person. In the Bloodland Abyss, there were many arrogant cultivators. Anyone who was not arrogant could go up and compete with them. Similarly, she did not care about others saying that she was arrogant. On the contrary, this could save her a lot of trouble. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang continue to challenge, everyone could not help but think of Bailey Hongzhuang's action on the 1st floor of the Bloodchi Tower yesterday. Would she be preparing to do the same thing on the 2nd floor? Bailey Hongzhuang doesn't want to get 10 consecutive victories here, does she? She's too bold. She is a newcomer with a little strength. She really thinks she is great. Brother, go up and teach her a lesson. The strength is on the second floor. The strength is strengths, is death's door. No one was optimistic about Bailey Hongzhuang. The same thing could not be repeated. Bailey Hongzhuang's action was undoubtedly provoking them all. Bailey Hongzhuang took in the expressions of the audience, but in her heart, she didn't care at all. Young master, does young madam really plan to challenge 10 people in a row? He Mu was a little incredulous. This was not a simple matter. From the discussions of the surrounding cultivators, he vaguely understood that young madam seemed to have done this yesterday. However, Deep Beichun smiled faintly. Why not? His woman was the same as him. They both had a kind of arrogance in their hearts. This kind of arrogance might be hateful in the eyes of others, but it was not a bad thing for them. It was to protect this arrogance that they could keep moving forward. Chapter 1063. Seeing Di Beichun's confident smile, He Mu was stunned for a moment. He did not expect the young master to be so confident in his wife's strength. For a moment, He Mu could not help but recall the time when the young madam and the young master went out for training. The young madam cultivated desperately under the waterfall. Her perseverance and unyielding character possessed a strength that no other woman possessed. It seemed that he had underestimated the young madam. Not long after Bailey Hongzhuang said that, another cultivator walked up to the ring. I'll do it. Bailey Hongzhuang was immersed in her comprehension of close-range combat. She could not wait for someone to give her a chance to practice. That cultivator from before was too weak. He was no match for her at all. Now that she saw another cultivator walking up to the ring, she was very excited. The referee registered the information of the two people very quickly, and the odds were also quickly announced. Now that the Bloodchi Tower had a new evaluation of Bailey Hongzhuang's strength, Bailey Hongzhuang's odds had decreased a lot. It was even lower than the cultivator's odds. The originally confident man's face turned ugly when he found out about the odds that the Bloodchi Tower had arranged for him. He did not expect the Bloodchi Tower to suddenly increase their evaluation of Bailey Hongzhuang's strength. Did this mean that the Bloodchi Tower thought that he would lose to a fledgling woman? Thinking of this, the man's eyes turned gloomy. However, the Bloodchi Tower was too powerful. He naturally did not dare to be dissatisfied with the Bloodchi Tower. Immediately, the man transferred all his anger to Bailey Hongzhuang. Although the match had not started yet, he had already been slapped in the face. Aha! Shui Huatian is usually a very arrogant person. I didn't expect the odds to be so high. What a joke. Isn't it obvious? The Bloodchi Tower thinks that Shui Huatian's strength is inferior to Bailey Hongzhuang. I've seen this guy fight before. He's not very strong. I'm afraid there's nothing to see in this match. Bailey Hongzhuang is going to win 2 matches in a row. Hearing the mocking words from below the stage, Shui Huatian's eyes became even gloomier. He secretly swore that he would use his fists to prove his strength. Bailey Hongzhuang also felt that the man in front of her was filled with endless hatred towards her. Her beautiful and refined face was indifferent and elegant. Even in the face of such hostile gazes, her eyes remained calm. Begin. As soon as the referee spoke, Bailey Hongzhuang seemed to have changed into another person. She was no longer as calm as before. Instead, she attacked as fast as lightning. Bang! It was just a simple collision, but Shui Huatian couldn't help but take 2 steps back. A hint of surprise appeared on his face. He had never placed Bailey Hongzhuang in his eyes. Now that they had exchanged blows, he realized that Bailey Hongzhuang's power was actually so terrifying. Previously, when he had seen Bailey Hongzhuang fighting against others, he had thought that her opponents were too weak and did not have any power at all. He never thought that Bailey Hongzhuang's power would be so abnormal. Forget about a woman. Even a man of the same level of cultivation would not be able to wield such power. However, Bailey Hongzhuang completely ignored the shock in the man's heart. Her hands circled around like agile snakes. Her fingers, hands, elbows, knees, and legs all became her weapons. She attacked her opponent fiercely and violently. Chapter 1064. When He Mu saw Bailey Hongzhuang's clean and efficient attack, a look of amazement surfaced in his eyes. After not seeing her for a while, the young mistress's improvement in strength was truly shocking. She was on a completely different level from before. Bang! Following Bailey Hongzhuang's beautiful sidekick, Shui Huatian was directly kicked out of the arena by Bailey Hongzhuang. Shui Huatian fell heavily to the ground. Although Bailey Hongzhuang's kick was very heavy, Shui Huatian's injuries were not very serious. He subconsciously wanted to stand up, but being kicked out of the arena by Bailey Hongzhuang was even more humiliating than being killed. Shui Huatian felt that it was difficult to face the crowd's mocking gazes. Thinking of this, Shui Huatian simply pretended to faint. As long as he left the Blood-Chi Tower now, he believed that everyone would gradually forget about this matter when he came back a few days later. In the arena, Bailey Hongzhuang saw that Shui Huatian had directly fainted and frowned slightly. Based on the situation of her attack just now, Shui Huatian should not have fainted. With a glance, Bailey Hongzhuang noticed Shui Huatian's slightly trembling eyelids and immediately understood. She did not expect Shui Huatian to be so thin-skinned. He was so arrogant before, but now he was actually pretending to be dead. Bailey Hongzhuang wins. The referee's voice rang out again. This time, the Blood-Chi Tower finally made a correct assessment of strength. When the cultivators present saw that Bailey Hongzhuang had won again, their expressions changed again. I told you that trash like Shui Huatian is no match for Bailey Hongzhuang. It's normal for him to lose. It's a good thing that Bailey Hongzhuang did not kill him. Shui Huatian and his opponent only fainted. As soon as this was said, the crowd remembered that Bailey Hongzhuang only wanted to defeat her opponent and did not want to kill them, just like yesterday on the first floor. Next, Bailey Hongzhuang said indifferently as her gaze fell upon the spectator stand. Beads of sweat appeared on Bailey Hongzhuang's fair and smooth forehead, but her eyes revealed a carefree and satisfied smile. That round of close combat earlier, she expended quite a bit of strength. But the consumption of essence energy was very small. A cultivator's endurance was also a part of their strength. In her previous life, she had undergone endurance training. This was because in times of danger, every bit of endurance increased the chances of survival. The strength of this body was much stronger than when she first crossed over, but there was still a big gap between it and her previous life. Everyone looked at Bailey Hongzhuang's sweaty eyes. Her fair and perfect face was flushed red from the 2 rounds of competition, making her look extremely sweet and alluring. Bailey Hongzhuang has gone through 2 rounds of battle in a row. She's exhausted. Now's the best time to go up and fight. The crowd's eyes lit up. They could judge Bailey Hongzhuang's current state from her expression. The later she went up, the higher their chances of success. Suddenly, another cultivator leaped up. He could not miss such a good opportunity. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the cultivator who had appeared before her again. Her bright, pitch-black eyes surged with battle intent, and the smile on her lips widened. She had not fought to her heart's content in a long time. Chapter 1065. Young Master, will young Madam run out of stamina? Heimu probed. A woman's stamina could not be compared to a man's. Moreover, young Madam had been fighting in close combat all this while. Her stamina was depleted very quickly. Di Baichen's noble and handsome face rippled with a faint smile. Those dark and deep eyes were filled with a wise and steady light. She knows what she's doing. From the situation of Bailey Hongzhuang's battle, he already understood Bailey Hongzhuang's thoughts. Since they had come to the Blood-Chi Tower to train, then naturally Bailey Hongzhuang could train however she wanted. His wife had always been intelligent. She clearly knew where her flaws were and how to improve her cultivation. On this point, if he was of the same age as Bailey Hongzhuang, he would feel ashamed of his inferiority. Bailey Hongzhuang's comprehension and understanding of her own abilities were extremely shocking. The battle was on the verge of breaking out. Following Bailey Hongzhuang's continuous outburst of battle power, the cultivators on the spectator's stand had already changed from their initial denial to doubt, astonishment, and finally, disbelief and even numbness. When Bailey Hongzhuang fought continuously for the 5th round, the crowd realized that Bailey Hongzhuang, who had been as swift as lightning, had slowed down. Obviously, she was running out of stamina. After the 5th cultivator was defeated, the 6th cultivator hurriedly walked up, afraid that he would miss this excellent opportunity. However, the following situation did not proceed in the direction that the crowd had expected. Because after Bailey Hongzhuang realized that she was running out of stamina, she no longer used close combat. Instead, she started to use her elemental energy to collide. After Bailey Hongzhuang displayed her skills, the crowd then reacted. After fighting continuously for 5 rounds, Bailey Hongzhuang's elemental energy was not depleted at all. At the thought of this, everyone was shocked by Bailey Hongzhuang's strength. This woman's strength and endurance were truly abnormal. After seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's actions, Di Beichen's perfect chin, which was as sharp as a knife, was slightly raised, and there was an arc of understanding. When Darkwood saw the smile on Di Beichen's face, his heart was filled with joy. Ever since he met the young madam, the young master had been smiling a lot more. Of course, what he said was a sincere smile. He had been by the young master's side for many years and knew the young master very well. Although the young lord would usually smile, that smile never reached his eyes. The young lord was only truly happy when he was with the young lord's wife. Now, it seemed that the young madam's strength was as abnormal as the young master's. Even though there was still a gap between the two of them, judging from the young madam's reckless momentum, her strength would probably increase very quickly. Thinking of this, He Mu was sincerely happy for the young master. Bang! Bailey Hongzhuang victory! When the referee announced Bailey Hongzhuang's victory for the 10th time, the crowd's expression had completely changed. They did not expect that Bailey Hongzhuang could complete a 10-match winning streak on the 2nd floor of the Bloodchi Tower. This was too abnormal. Bloody Rose's face turned pale. Bailey Hongzhuang had slapped her face with her strength. A 10-match winning streak was very rare in the history of the Bloodchi Tower. When she thought of what she had said before, she felt as if she had become a complete joke. Chapter 1066. Bailey Hongzhuang walked to Di Beichen's side and sat down. Her beautiful face was filled with an elegant smile. I've been waiting for a long time. Di Beichen smiled faintly. No matter how long I've been waiting for you, it's not too long. Your speed is already very fast. Bailey Hongzhuang's smile widened. Now, Di Beichen's words were even more pleasant to listen to. You must be very tired from the battle just now. Why don't you take a rest and come back later? The low and sexy voice was filled with concern and pity. The strength of the practitioners on the 2nd floor of the Bloodchi Tower was indeed much stronger than the practitioners on the 1st floor. Obviously, Bailey Hongzhuang would have to spend more energy to deal with them. The 2nd floor of the Bloodchi Tower was also more difficult than the 1st floor. It was not suitable for her to challenge it in her current state. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. Okay. She understood Di Beichen's concern. She also knew that if she challenged the 2nd floor in her current state, she would most likely fail. It was better to adjust her condition and come back later. He Mu immediately went to the betting area to collect their winnings. This time, they really earn a lot. When the cultivators and the spectators stand saw He Mu's actions, they were envious. That was a huge sum of money. If I had known, I would have kept betting that Bailey Hongzhuang would win. How much would I have won then? With hindsight, what's the use of saying this now? I don't know where Bailey Hongzhuang and He Mu came from. Their strength is really abnormal. Everyone sighed. There were many strong practitioners in the Bloodchi Tower, but Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were obviously the most abnormal of the abnormal, because the two of them were not ordinary young people. After He Mu returned, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen stood up and walked out of the Bloodchi Tower. Bailey Hongzhuang stroked Baisher's fur. Speaking of which, Baisher's fur was really good to the touch. In the following days, Bailey Hongzhuang cultivated in the Bloodchi Tower every day. After He Mu came to the Bloodchi Tower, he also followed Di Beichen to improve his strength. He Mu's strength was not weak, but the Bloodchi Tower was also a good place for him to cultivate. However, the task of preparing meals every day had now fallen on He Mu. After learning that Bailey Hongzhuang had 3 gluttonous beasties, He Mu was also surprised. He had always known that a practitioner could contract with a contract beast, but he had never heard of several contract beast contract. In his eyes, the Beichun and Hei Mu. In his eyes, the young master and Hei Beichun was not ordinary people. Compared to Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun, Hei Mu was undoubtedly the most obedient and the easiest to bully. Therefore, the three beasts were extremely happy with the arrival of Hei Mu. They let Hei Mu prepare delicious food for them all day long. Kanglan College. After Xia Jiqing finished her cultivation, her beautiful face was covered with a touch of longing. It has been 3 months since I separated from Hongzhuang. Until now, Hongzhuang has not come back. We have not received any news. I don't know when she will come back. Hongzhuang went with Di Beichun to gain experience. I believe that Di Beichun will take good care of her. Don't worry, Zhang Yunfeng said slowly. Her white and bright face also showed a look of longing. After not seeing her for 3 months, she really missed Bailey Hongzhuang. Chapter 1067. Listening to Xia Jiqing's words, Zhang Yunfeng nodded slightly. Xia Jiqing and Bailey Hongzhuang had always been very good friends. Since the two came to Kanglan College, their relationship had always been very good. Now that Bailey Hongzhuang had been away for so long, it was normal for Xia Jiqing to miss Bailey Hongzhuang. Not to mention Xia Jiqing, she also hoped that Bailey Hongzhuang could come back as soon as possible. Even if she had some misunderstandings with Bailey Hongzhuang, after experiencing so many things, she only had admiration for Bailey Hongzhuang. It shouldn't take long for her to come back. Zhang Yunfeng comforted. She should come back. Xia Jiqing's eyes flashed with a touch of worry. With Di Beichun's identity, Bailey Hongzhuang had become his wife. Her identity was naturally not ordinary. If Bailey Hongzhuang did not return to Kanglan College, then she really did not know what to do. Hearing the worry in Xia Jiqing's words, Zhang Yunfeng chuckled. You can rest assured, Hongzhuang said before that she will come back, so she will definitely come back. How could she not come back? Looking at Zhang Yunfeng's natural appearance, Xia Jiqing's eyes flashed with a bright light. Right, I must be thinking too much. Zhang Yunfeng patted Xia Jiqing's shoulder and smiled. Yes, you must be thinking too much. Xia Jiqing showed a smile. From the first time she saw Bailey Hongzhuang, she and Bailey Hongzhuang were very congenial. The time they spent together was not very long, but she regarded Bailey Hongzhuang as a real sister. She only hoped that they could continue to cultivate together in the future. At the thought of this, Xia Jiqing's expression showed a trace of determination. She must work hard to close the distance between her and Bailey Hongzhuang. Only in this way could they cultivate together in the future and progress together. Otherwise, when the gap between them was too big, even if Bailey Hongzhuang wanted to improve together with her, she could only be a burden. Yunfeng, I'm going to cultivate. Xia Jiqing's lips curved into a bright smile, and she said firmly. Looking at the brilliance on Xia Jiqing's pretty face, Zhang Yunfeng couldn't help but sigh. Since Bailey Hongzhuang left, Xia Jiqing had been particularly diligent in her cultivation. It was really like what Bailey Hongzhuang said when she left. She was constantly working hard, just waiting for Bailey Hongzhuang to see her progress. Speaking of which, Xia Jiqing's crazy cultivation also stimulated another person. That was Bai Junyu. Everyone knew that Bai Junyu liked Xia Jiqing. However, although Bai Junyu was usually very talkative, he was shy in front of Xia Jiqing. He couldn't confess at all. Although everyone was anxious for Bai Junyu, they couldn't help it. After all, this kind of thing needed to be said by the person involved. They could only help to create an opportunity for Bai Junyu and Xia Jiqing to be together. When Bai Junyu saw Xia Jiqing cultivating so hard, he naturally didn't dare to fall behind. After all, if his cultivation was surpassed by Xia Jiqing, then he wouldn't be qualified to catch up with Xia Jiqing. Therefore, everyone only saw that Bai Junyu and Xia Jiqing were both desperately cultivating. The degree of hard work made people ashamed. Lu Huayan and the two mentors were also very surprised when they saw Bai Junyu and Xia Jiqing cultivating so hard, but they were more happy. This time, the inter-school competition made them have too many emotions and understand the gap between the students.